On a gloomy day, rain poured down like drops from a crimson sky, creating an eerie atmosphere. The ground was silent, littered with corpses and blood that mingled with the rainwater, making the scene even more terrifying. Ronan stood amidst the bodies. He had just endured a brutal battle. He looked exhausted and drained. Almost no one had survived except Ronan. He leaned his head on his sword, sweat dripping down his face, his clothes torn and tattered. Others had been pierced through the chest by swords or shot in the back. Almost everyone bore some injury, their bodies bleeding profusely. Ronan raised his head and looked around cautiously, his eyes and mouth bleeding from the aftermath of the battle. Before him lay an entire fallen legion, a scene filled with casualties. Only their flag still stood tall. He muttered, "They died in great numbers." Ronan was nearly spent, sweat covering his face, his gaze fixed on one spot, clearly exhausted. He couldn't help but mutter, "Damn it!" A steady sound echoed Ahayut. "You've been too careless." His sharp intuition sensed something amiss, and he immediately looked down. There lay the belly of a man so large that rainwater pooled around him. The man spoke in a terrifying voice. "To think there's such a powerful human?" Ronan saw him, his eyes blazing, teeth clenched. "You're still alive." Ronan stood on the belly of the colossal man Ahayut, who looked terrifying with pale white eyes, 4 horns on his head, and his body covered in sword wounds. His arms were spread wide as if exhausted, and his white wings looked tattered. Ronan stood on Ahayut's body, which was already flattened. Before this battle, he had seemed immensely powerful and strong. The giant Ahayut. Earlier, he and his 3 brothers had come to the Empire, wreaking havoc wherever they went. Tens of thousands had perished, their bodies piled high. Among the 3, one had 2 horns, another 3, and the last 4. After appearing in the Empire 20 days ago, they had caused chaos at will. He was the last of the trio of giants. Returning to the present, Ronan suddenly stomped hard on Ahayut's face. The kick sent water splashing everywhere from his belly. He placed 1 foot on the man's nose, staring face to face with the colossal man. At this moment, he had the upper hand. He said, "So why aren't you dead yet?" His foot pressed firmly against the man's face as he threatened, "Don't worry. It won't be long now. Ahayut will soon return to your side." The man's eyes glowed, but he showed no reaction to this action. Ronan looked at him with disdain and said, "Well done. Your dead friends are waiting for you." Ahayute seemed indifferent to the insults, but upon hearing Ronan's words, he reacted. "Friends, yes, 2 came with that person." Recalling the deaths of those 2 wasn't exactly pleasant. One of them had turned into a giant. The other was burned alive by the Crimson Dragon's flame, and the other was sealed away forever by an old man named Lorhan. After speaking, Ronan seemed satisfied with his words. His eyes widened as he looked at the man, a pleased smile on his face, despite the sweat and tattered clothes. His demeanor was still captivating. "You got that, you fool?" Ahayute didn't want to hear him. He retorted, "Don't hide the truth, mighty human." Ronan was clearly taken aback by his words. The rain continued to fall, each drop landing on his thin hair. His teeth clenched as Ahayut spoke again. "I know those enemies have already been buried with them." His deep, terrifying voice echoed. "That means strong ones like you no longer exist." Though he was a giant with his back on the ground and Ronan standing on him, Ronan looked even more imposing. Hearing Ahayut's words, Ronan scoffed disdainfully. "I'm still alive and well. What are you talking about?" His words were sharp, but Ahayut noticed a flaw. His eyes lit up and he began to counter. "Don't speak too soon. I know your time is almost up." "I'm quite pleased," Ronan said, pressing his foot harder against Ahayut's face, but the giant didn't care, and continued. "If you had realized your skills earlier and focused on training, so you've become the greatest obstacle to our ambition." Those words made Ronan freeze for a moment. He clenched his teeth, lowered his head, and growled in anger. "All this time you—" Ronan's smile vanished. His mouth turned down and his cold gaze looked downward. He no longer wanted to hide anything. "Everything about me is true. I don't need you to tell me how pathetic my life is. Just shut up and die." Ahayute's expression didn't change. You are a great human. You have the right to be proud. Ronan picked up his sword, seemingly ignoring the man's words, but Ronan's strength seemed to have reached its limit. Heavy breaths echoed continuously. Ahayut in the end. Your world, Ahayute continued, will soon be swallowed by the stars and vanish. Without letting him finish, Ronan struck, slamming Ahayut's head into the ground. He jumped down and delivered a powerful slash, a massive light emanating from the strike. The man's head flew far away, and the ground rose with the shockwave of the sword strike. Through the hole in the horn, a beam of light shone from the sky. Such a painful death was perhaps something Ahayut never expected. The head fell with a thud after killing the last remaining giant. Ronan turned and walked away, his back showing no attachment to the pile of corpses. His eyes grew colder, looking down at a fixed point. The rain continued endlessly, mixing with the blood that had long soaked the ground. The scene was utterly desolate. After a while, he suddenly wondered, "What do you want me to do about what's happened?" Ronan walked with empty thoughts, his foot stepping into a red puddle, creating a whirlpool. Ronan's body was utterly exhausted, and he seemed on the verge of collapsing. He struggled to drag himself forward, despair gradually taking over his body. But as if seeing something unexpected, Ronan suddenly looked up, his mouth still gasping for breath. A scene from the past appeared back when he was in the army with his comrades. They were all tall, strong, and cheerful, while Ronan was smaller and more reserved, struggling to fit in despite everyone's friendliness. Ronan suddenly noticed a friend beside him. The friend turned and smiled at Ronan. He had a long scar across his eye, and his hair parted in two. Perhaps it was this friend who helped Ronan blend in more with the others. Later, they went to this battlefield together, fighting side by side as comrades, always together through life and death. But in this brutal battle, he had fallen a sword pierced through his armor and into his stomach. Blood sprayed everywhere, leaving him horrified. But it was too late. Ronan's eyes stopped at a fixed point. "You're all here, huh?" Ronan stopped at a place where the bodies of his comrades were piled up. They had all died painfully pierced by swords. Ronan's closest friend lay before him lifeless, his eyes still open. The scene was more despairing than anything else. Ronan cursed loudly, "You damn fools!" Ronan knelt in pain, both physical and emotional. "Why were you so arrogant as to fight to the death? Did you think you were stronger than me?" He reached out and closed his friend's eyes. This was perhaps the last thing Ronan could do for him. "You should have known when to run, you idiots." Ronan remained kneeling, blaming himself and his comrades. Why, how could the giants defy even the strongest aura sword in the Empire? Why was it only my sword that could defeat them? He stared at his friend. Guilt tormented Ronan's soul even though he wasn't at fault. If it weren't for this, a mere corporal like me wouldn't have been sent to the front lines, and you wouldn't have died. Ronan's eyes were filled with despair. He sat down in a pool of blood, having survived a life-and-death battle alone. The one left behind was the one who suffered the most. Suddenly in the darkness, a voice called out, "Is anyone there?" Hearing the voice, Ronan suddenly looked up, his eyes wide with surprise. Someone said, "I'm injured and can't move." The voice sounded somewhat familiar, as if realizing something. Surprise filled his eyes. The person continued to call for help. "Is anyone there?" Ronan immediately planted his sword in the ground and went to find the source of the voice. He stood up and shouted, "Looking for someone! You're still alive!" Ronan struggled to move forward step by step. The pain made him grit his teeth, as if he had found the person he was looking for. His eyes stopped at a fixed point. He ran toward a distant figure, a girl who was severely injured. She was Adeshan Akalusia. Ronan was overjoyed to see her, a smile breaking across his face. "So you're still alive," he continued, "Commander." Adeshan Akalusia was wearing tattered clothes. She sat leaning against a large rock, her body covered in blood, her face exhausted. Seeing him, she said, "Adeshan." Ronan gritted his teeth, feeling helpless and unsure of what to do. He slowly approached her and asked, "What happened to our brilliant leader?" Adeshan was surprised he was still alive. "Ronan, weren't you just a corporal? You're not that strong." She remembered something serious and asked, More importantly, is Ahayut dead? Hearing this, Ronan replied, Yes, I killed him. His body isn't far from here. Adashan sighed in relief. Really? This surprised Ronan, who wondered why she asked. Suddenly tears streamed down Adashan's face. She muttered, He's dead, she cried and whispered. Thank you, Corporal Ronan. Thank you so much. Ronan silently looked at his commander, never expecting someone as cold as her to cry. Ronan gave a thumbs up. If you're so grateful, could you grant me one request? Hearing this, Adashan asked. A request. What is it? Regarding the handling of the loyal soldiers' bodies, normally according to regulations, their bodies would be burned or discarded. But this time, could you order a more respectful treatment for them? She looked at him, pondered for a moment, and then said, I'm not sure about that. I'm in worse shape than you are now, so wouldn't it be better if you took care of them yourself? No sooner had he finished speaking than Ronan started coughing violently. Oh God, Commander, how could I possibly dare? He raised his blood-soaked hand in front of her, panting. See, I'm not in much better shape than you are. Ronan looked at the blood from his mouth. I could die at any moment now. He sighed with deep regret. Most days, I just wandered around aimlessly, never got the chance to do anything meaningful. And now I'm being dragged to the grave like this. The heavens are truly unfair. Adashan asked him, If you were to survive, is there anything you'd want to do? He smiled and replied, Yes, there's a lot. Then Ronan looked up at the sky. The only thing I can think of right now is, he wondered, what would it feel like to go to the academy? She asked. The academy. Ronan recalled the memory of his battle. That damn giant said something that's been on my mind, he continued. But more importantly, Ronan explained it's because my sister's last wish was for me to attend the academy. He sighed. What a pity. Perhaps in just a few minutes I'll be reunited with my family. Adashan tried to salvage the situation, reassuring him. Once the rain stops, the rescue team will start searching. Ronan calmly said, I already told you I've been listed as missing. Why do you keep saying that? Ronan fell silent for a moment, then said, Such useless things. Suddenly the rain began to let up. The sunlight gradually broke through. The commander and Ronan were startled. He looked up. What's going on? Has the rain stopped? Adashan couldn't help but wonder. The storm suddenly stopped. At that moment, the ground began to shake. An earthquake occurred. Both were panicked, not knowing what was happening. Ronan was annoyed. What's this? He suddenly noticed something. An 8-winged monster with blinding light appeared. Ronan shouted. Not only that, but hundreds of monsters also began to appear. Ronan exclaimed in alarm. What is happening? Where did they suddenly crawl out from? Seeing the scene before her, Adashan felt helpless. So the 3 giants weren't the end of it. Her voice trembled. In the end, I still couldn't save the world, not even 3 times. Adashan, in despair, speculated endlessly. There's only one last chance left. I can't think of anything else. A voice interrupted her thoughts. Commander, Ronan shouted, snapping her out of it. He shouted, What is wrong with you? You need to learn to control your emotions. Quickly use your telekinetic power or anything you have, and throw me up there. Damn it. I'm stuck down here, and my sword can't even reach them. She was stunned for a moment. Why, he continued to scold. Don't tell me you're not planning to destroy them. Adashan was shocked. In this situation, you still plan to fight. Ronan looked at her helplessly. What else are you just going to sit there and wait to die? He was serious, even if I have to die. Ronan drew his sword and continued. No matter what, I must tear off the wings of those savages. Hey, get down here now. Adashan thought to herself, even in this state, he hasn't given up. She realized something and exclaimed, That's right! He's that kind of person. If not, how could we have come this far? She then thought, if it were him, faced with his determination to fight Adashan, was momentarily stunned. She placed her hand on Corporal Ronan's shoulder. He turned his head and asked, What now? He looked visibly annoyed and said, I'm busy right now. Please say less. Suddenly, she rushed forward and gave him a passionate kiss, leaving him stunned. Ronan thought, What's going on? From Adashan's mouth, a blue gem was passed into his mouth. He looked at her with suspicion and asked, What did you just feed me? She leaned close to his ear and whispered something. Ronan was taken aback by what he heard. Wait, what did you just say? He tried to listen carefully, attempting to grasp what she was trying to say. Ronan pushed Adishan away. In this situation, what are you even saying? She called his name Corporal Ronan. Adishan asked Ronan, if we were to meet again, could you tell me to stop doing stupid things and just settle down as a tailor? These words shocked Ronan. I've done so many things until now. She looked at him and smiled. But I've never tried that before. Hearing this, Ronan thought for a moment, then looked straight at her. A monster was summoning its power. He aimed directly at the two people in front of him. Immediately, a terrifying explosion occurred. Adishan's gem glowed, and then vanished into nothingness. Ronan opened his eyes and woke up. He exclaimed. Commander Ronan shouted, calling her name, Commander! But the peaceful scene before him left him in shock. He was surprised. No, it can't be. Is this place really... Under his hand was lush green grass. Ronan stood up in a panic. He couldn't believe his eyes. My hometown, Nimberton. Have I really gone back to the past? At that moment, the system notification appeared. Special Notice Regression Day 1. Under the large tree, Ronan sat leaning against the trunk, sighing deeply. One hand held his forehead, his eyes dazed from what he had just experienced. The commander's words. They were real. Recalling that fateful moment, Ronan had been terrified by Adishan's actions. Their lips met as she passed him a gem. This left Ronan panicked. What did you just put in my mouth? But she remained calm, explaining her plan. What you just swallowed is a gem that can reverse time. Adishan looked at him with a serious gaze, making her words even more credible. That's why someone as foolish as me could rise to the position of commander. Although this gem allows time reversal 4 times, I've already used it 3 times. So there's only one chance left. Her eyes softened, filled with hope for him and her own helplessness. So I'll leave it to you, the power to kill the giants. Knowing full well that she and Ronan couldn't handle the colossal men as they were now, she continued to whisper in his ear, I believe you're the key to stopping the destruction of this world, so you need to train your skills. I'm glad you want to do that too. He didn't expect his casual words from before to have left such an impression on Adishan. He panicked. What, I was just talking nonsense. Despite his denial, she advised, if you want to learn, go to the Phyleon Academy. There are excellent people there, so I'm sure it'll be useful for you. Returning to reality, Ronan gritted his teeth. Damn it! The more I think about it, the angrier I get. Is this for real? If this is a dream, wake up already. But even if I really went back to the past, what can I do alone? Suddenly, Ronan's eyes widened in shock, as if he remembered something. Wait, is this the past? With that thought in mind, he tightly gripped the wooden stick beside him. Then Ronan stood up abruptly, staring straight at the large tree. His legs moved briskly across the green grass. Finally, he grabbed the wooden stick and ran quickly, his heart filled with joy at the thought of seeing his sister again. Under the blazing sun, Ronan swung the stick through the crowded street. Thinking about the prospect of reuniting with his sister, his face lit up with excitement. If I've really gone back just a little further? Suddenly, Ronan's gaze caught something that surprised him. From a distance, Hans's group was bullying someone, making him unable to hold back. You bastards! Seeing the victim's pained, writhing expression, Ronan wondered, why is a child being hung upside down like this? He decided to turn away, not wanting to get involved, as he was all too familiar with Hans's despicable actions. They haven't changed at all. But as he turned away, Ronan noticed something strange. Wait, that child isn't hung by a rope, but by magic. The appearance of someone who could use magic in this remote area confused him. Why would someone of such value, rarely seen on the battlefield, appear in this rural area? Remembering something important, he exclaimed in surprise. Now I remember this time period. They must be here too. The atmosphere around a cell grew dark. He trembled, his face filled with fear. How long are they going to keep this up? If this continues, something will happen to that kid. The child hung upside down, kept pleading. Please stop. One leg was wrapped in a magical light. He cried, begging, I really don't have any money. My mother's medicine is expensive this month. The child's pitiful situation didn't move Hans's heart. He laughed. So what do you want me to do? Why should I care about your mother's health? In an instant, Hans's expression turned stern. He raised his arm high. Every word you utter lands like a hard slap, distorting the child's face. If you were truly a filial son, you should be earning more money by now. Suddenly, Hans stopped and turned to look at Asel. He ordered, "This kid still doesn't get it. Pull him up the tree." Asel was horrified. He hesitated. "I can't do that." "If I pull him higher and accidentally let go," Hans snapped. "You're not a girl. Why are you so scared? Aren't you the one hanging him up?" He warned in a low voice. "Shut up and pull him up quickly, Asel, before you get hung up with him." Asel's face turned pale with fear. His brows furrowed, his mind in turmoil. Why did things turn out like this? Was learning magic a mistake? Recalling the moment he happily performed magic for the villagers, he emphasized, "I just wanted to show everyone that I'm good at something too." His hands casting magic trembled uncontrollably. He felt guilty. "I have to tell him I can't do it." But Asel's face twisted, tears welling up. "I'm too scared." He bit his lower lip, encouraging himself. "No, I still have to speak up." As Hans and his gang eagerly waited, he shakily spoke up. "Please stop." The moment Asel uttered those words, a wooden stick swung toward him. Ronan, after giving him a tap on the head, warned, "Stop it, you bastard! You'll kill him now!" The magic was interrupted, and the light around the child's leg vanished. He fell to the ground, much to the surprise of Hans's group. Hans was furious. "What are you doing?" Hans charged toward Asel, raising his fist in a threatening manner. "When he tells you to stop, you just obey. Did you think I was joking?" Asel replied, voice trembling, I didn't mean to." At that moment, Ronan suddenly stepped in front of him. Ronan calmly said, "Asel, don't bother with that trash. And talk to me." Asel finally realized who had just hit him. "Ronan," he ignored Hans behind him and continued the conversation. "I have something to say to you." Hans was furious at being treated like air. "You bastard, is that really you?" Ronan asked. "Where did you learn that teleportation magic?" Asel honestly shared. "I learned it from a spell book I bought from a street vendor." His answer left Ronan both surprised and impressed. "You learned from a cheap spell book and became this skilled?" He pondered. "This is amazing. I'll need to observe more to understand, but with this, when facing the giants." A long sword was slowly being drawn, accompanied by a sharp sound. With his skills and battlefield experience, Ronan immediately recognized the sound. Seeing Hans with a furious expression and a long sword in hand, he was taken aback. A sword? He even brought that out. "Do you really think you can just ignore me?" Hans's eyes flared with anger veins bulging on his forehead. He brought up the past. "It seems, since I intentionally lost to you last time, you've become arrogant, haven't you?" As soon as he finished speaking, he charged at Ronan with his sword, shouting, "But today, I'll set you straight." Danger was approaching, but Ronan remained calm. He looked at the sword coming toward him, silently assessing. A real longsword. Where did he get that? His stance was poor, but thanks to his overwhelming strength, he was still able to overpower those around him in this area. He gently leaned back, avoiding Hans's slash, feeling proud. "Of course he's no match for me." Hans's eyes widened in shock, his face showing unease as he watched Ronan easily dodge the attack. He avoided it so easily. Ronan was satisfied with his body's reflexes, thinking to himself, "Even though my body has regressed, some things remain the same. The thing ingrained in my body from being a disciplined soldier, combat intuition." To hide his unease, Hans mocked himself. "Lucky shot. I was planning to make you unable to lift a spoon for the rest of your life." Ronan didn't bother arguing. "That's right, today I'm lucky even though I've been unlucky my whole life." Not giving up on his plan to make Ronan submit, Hans raised his sword and warned, "Then kneel and beg for mercy. I'll spare your life, though you'll only have one hand left." His words carried no psychological impact. Ronan sneered, so scary. Seemingly unaware of Ronan's indifference, Hans continued, "If I kill you, I'll definitely treat your sister well." Upon hearing him mention his sister, Ronan immediately asked in a stern voice, "You just said, she's on this side." Hans replied with a mocking tone, "Yes. Every time I see her, I can't help but think. She's quite striking." Without waiting for Hans to finish, Ronan's face darkened, his eyes terrifying, as he swung the wooden stick forward with force. Drops of blood sprayed into the air, glistening in the sunlight. Hans stood frozen, as if he hadn't yet processed what had just happened to him. Watching one of his ears fly into the air, he was stunned. The long sword fell heavily to the ground, making a sharp clanging sound. Bone-deep pain shot through Hans, and he let out a horrifying scream. He clutched one side of his head, groaning in pain. "My ear! My ear!" His subordinates behind him turned pale with fear. A pair of brown shoes stepped toward him, accompanied by a cold voice. Ronan's face was dark as he scolded, "You bastard!" Ronan's eyes bulged with anger veins popping. "Do you want to die?" In the open lot, a group of young men stood by watching, as Ronan overwhelmed Hans completely. They were terrified. How could this happen? He cut off his ear. Blood dripped from the wooden stick onto the ground. With just a wooden stick, he spoke, making them panic. "Hey, you bastards, enjoying the show?" Ronan kicked Hans repeatedly, making him cry out in pain. "If you don't want to end up like this scum, take each other's hands and get lost." Terrified, they held their bleeding heads. "Of course, remember to leave the money you just extorted as compensation for my mental distress." Yes, they quickly agreed. "We'll return it." Ronan returned the extorted money to the boy, leaving him bewildered. "Here, this is yours." The boy asked in confusion. "You're really giving it all to me. This is more than what they took from me." "It's fine, I don't need it." He was so overjoyed that he cried, clutching the money pouch tightly to his chest. "Don't worry about them seeking revenge. They don't have the guts to hang around here anymore." "Thank you. You're incredibly kind." Ronan waved his hand lightly as if it were nothing. "It's nothing. You should head home now." Asello stood in the middle, clenching his hands, feeling awkward. "What's wrong?" He said, "I'm really sorry." Asel bowed his head, apologizing. "I'm sorry." He recalled how scared he had been. "I know I shouldn't have done that, even if Hans threatened me." Asel cried, tears streaming down his face. "But I was so scared I couldn't do anything. It's all my fault. I sincerely apologize." He sighed and smiled. "Asel, you're crying again." "When Hans brought you here? When I saw you, I thought, you must have been in the same situation as me." He placed a hand on Asel's shoulder, comforting him. "So Asel, don't blame yourself like that." He smiled brightly. "It's not your fault, but I'll accept your sincerity." He bowed and said goodbye, holding the bag of money as he left. Asel waved goodbye to him. Ronan's gaze was thoughtful as he looked down. In his eyes, Asel was a kind and lovely girl. Ronan smirked. "Well, she's not that bad." He whistled softly at Asel's shoulder, startling her. "Hey, remember I said I needed to discuss something with you?" Ronan turned away and said, "All right, we'll meet here again in 4 days. 4 days." Asel turned back to ask Ronan, "What's going on? I have something to do now. See you later when the moon rises." He drew his sword, looking at Asel with a warning gaze that made her turn pale. "Of course, if you don't show up, you know the consequences, right?" He ran off, leaving Asel alone, unsure of what to say. "All right, I'm off. If you're late, you're dead." Asel was left dumbfounded. Deep in the forest, there was a small house. Ronan stood in front of the door, the sunlight casting his shadow on the door. Ronan held a bouquet of fresh roses. "Is this too much?" "I remember she likes flowers, so I picked whatever I saw." He felt awkward and wanted to throw the bouquet away. "I knew it. I should have just tossed them." The wooden door opened and a pair of legs stepped out. "I wonder who's outside." "Oh, it's you, Ronan." Ronan glanced back. "I'm back. When I was in the army, I always wondered what I'd say when I saw her again. Should I apologize for leaving without a word? Or say I missed her so much? I've always thought about this day. But that's all the disciplined soldier Ronan could muster." Iriel smiled brightly. "All I can say is you're home early today." He was stunned by her words. Ronan held the bouquet and bowed his head. "Yes, I'm back." Iriel had prepared a meal on the table. "Oh my, I didn't expect to live to see this day." She hugged the bouquet, smiling happily. "My cold little brother gave me flowers. Ronan's sister, Iriel." Ronan shouted in joy. "I'm so happy. As long as you're happy, that's all that matters." She wanted to get more food for Ronan, but he refused. "My adorable little brother, is that enough? Let me get you some more stew." "No, thank you. I'm full. Ronano looked at Iriel and asked, "But I have a question. How old are you this year?" "Oh my Ronano, I'm 22. "But why are you asking?" He hesitated. I just forgot. How could I forget your age?" Iriel stood up worriedly. "Are you hurt?" Do you have a fever? If she's 22 now, then there are 10 more years before those bastards arrive. She came closer and placed her hand on Ronan's forehead. I don't think you have a fever. Just as I thought my sister is still the same. He looked at Iriel's worried expression, still smiling and kind-hearted. Are you sure you're okay? And warm, too. I wish this moment could last forever. One of Ronan's hands touched Iriel's, but in 10 years to protect this world and her, he held her hand and lowered it. I have something to tell you. What is it? Ronan informed her I've decided to join the academy. Iriel looked at him. The academy. Her eyes lit up when she heard him say that, really. Iriel was so happy she cried. Say it again! Are you serious? You never listened whenever I brought it up before. Ronan was speechless as he watched her actions. I can't wait any longer. Iriel rummaged through everything in the house. I knew this day would come. You're so smart, so you'll definitely excel at everything you want. Thank you, Iriel. Iriel placed a pot on the ground. So, both of them looked inside the large pot, a surprise gift. What's this? Inside the pot was a pile of gold coins. Money, why so much? I secretly saved up to surprise you. Ronan looked at the pile of gold coins in amazement. If you haven't changed your mind about the academy, I want to pay for your tuition. You're so kind. When did you start this? He continued. But even though I'm very grateful, I want you to spend this money. This isn't enough. What do you mean? Iriel placed her hands on her hips and looked at Ronan. It looks like a lot, but I don't know where you plan to study. The Royal Academy Philion Academy. She was surprised when he mentioned the name of the academy he intended to attend. A piercing scream echoed from the wooden house throughout the forest. What? The Imperial Academy of Philion, the leading educational institution in the entire empire. With the most renowned professors on the continent, and an incredibly abundant fund from the empire's major families, this is the place that offers students the best educational opportunities. It's prestigious enough to be called the factory that produces the empire's famous heroes. General Adishan, the master swordsman. The worst criminal, the Ice Witch. Those from Philion were quite useful during the war, so useful that I can understand why the general mentioned it to me. In the dark forest, Ronan walked alone with his backpack. With such high admission standards and a huge fee, its fame is also a problem. He thought of Iriel. But considering her reaction, if it's Ronan, you can do it. Ronan's footsteps stopped. His eyes showed determination. All right, I'll show her the results. A pair of legs blocked Ronan's path. But before that, I didn't know you'd be here. Asel stepped out from behind the tree. Asel. No, it's Asel. He saw Ronan and became flustered. And you said you wouldn't leave me alone if I didn't come, so let's forget about that, okay? He took off his backpack. We'll be very busy tonight, and there are a few things I need to check about you. Ronan threw the backpack to the ground with a thud. A test. He raised his hand, leaving Asel completely confused. What are you talking about? It's nothing much. Ronan smiled, pointing at himself. Use your psychic ability on me, Asel. Lift me as high as you can with your ability. Let's see. Hearing this, Asel's face was drenched in sweat. Use psychic power, Asel asked in confusion. Wait, why do I have to do something so dangerous? It's not that dangerous, just do as I say first. All right. He hesitantly raised his hands. I'm not going to die, so don't be scared. Okay then. A blue light emanated from his hands. I'll begin. Then Asel shouted, pointing his hands toward Ronan. Invisible hands. Ronan was surprised as he saw the light surrounding him. The light swirled around Ronan's feet, lifting him off the ground. Look, it's much better now. Ronan floated in mid-air, smiling with delight. It's even better than I thought. Although it's still lacking in height and balance, this feeling is very similar to back then. In the battle with Ahayude, what allowed me to fight on par with that bastard was psychic power. Psychic power is a rare ability even among mages. This means he'll become one of the most important factors in supporting the battle against Ahayut. Starting like this. Asel closed his eyes, trembling. Not bad, right, Ronan? It's a bit hard for me to control. From above, Ronan drew his sword and looked at Asel. Can you let me down now? Hold on a bit longer. I have one more thing to check. Asel frowned, visibly concerned for Ronan. I'll go down myself. What are you saying? You'll go down there on your own. Ronan raised his sword high. He slashed through the air. Asel's eyes widened as he watched Ronan's action. What's this? Ronan jumped down from a great height without sustaining any injuries. Did he just cut off his own mana flow? He asked about Ronan's action. What did you just do? Nothing, just a flip I've known how to do since forever. Ronan punched Asel in the head. What do you mean by flipping? This is the first time I've seen someone cut a mana flow. Never mind, I don't know why either. Ronan sheathed his sword. Figuring out what this skill is will be a whole homework assignment for me. The sword reflected the image of the giant Ahayut. The reason my sword had an effect on him might be why? I can think about this slowly. So now, Ronano picked up his backpack. There's work to do. Anyway, you've passed Asel. Asel caught the bag Ronan threw to him. Take this and follow me before the moon completely disappears. We have a few things to do. Ronano smirked. Why so late at night? What do you mean? Under the moonlight, Ronan's eyes gleamed. This could be the first page of Ronan's autobiography, the greatest book in the entire empire. The moonlight shone down on the gloomy forest. In the forest, only Asel and Ronan were present. Philion Academy right. Asel panted as he walked. Did I hear wrong, Ronan? Are we really going to Philion Academy, where only the Empire's elite gather? Ronano glanced at Asel to answer his question. You and I are the standard, so don't ask again. It's annoying. He looked at Asel's hesitant demeanor and asked, What's wrong? Don't you want to go? No, that's not the issue. Asel replied in confusion. You're talented in martial arts, so you'll be fine. But I don't know anything. Ronano's gaze turned fierce. And you're both cowardly and stubborn Asel. Do you want to keep living like this? Asel was stunned by Ronan's words. With your natural talent, you're wasting it by being a laughingstock. Is that really the life you want? Ronan crossed his arms over his chest, closed his eyes and said, To be honest, you have a rather foolish way of thinking. You're both cowardly and withdrawn. Ronano's words pierced Asel's chest like a knife. You've become a crybaby crying over every little thing and you're a failure. But that's okay, because from now on, you can still change. But the time that's passed can't be taken back. And one day you'll regret it, like I once did. The image of Ronan standing on the battlefield holding a blood-stained sword in his past life. He placed a hand on Asel's shoulder. What do you think changed your mind, Ronan? Suddenly, Asel's cheeks turned red. Oh my God, Ronan! Asel covered his mouth, looking at Ronan with emotional eyes. You've been so worried about someone like me all this time, I won't force you. This is your life, so if you want, you can go back to that lifestyle. Asel shouted as Ronano turned to leave. Wait, Ronano, I want to change too. Ronano smiled smugly when he heard that. I'll go to Philion with you. So teach me what I need to do. Outwardly, he acted indifferent, but inside, he was very pleased. All right, this is the first time you've shown your masculinity, Asel. Let's start the first step of Asel's great masculinity right away. A look of cunning and satisfaction appeared on Ronan's face as he turned his back on him. Just as I predicted. The flames rose, warming the surrounding air. Asel was alert when he saw the light in the forest. Ronano and Asel hid in the bushes, whispering to each other. Ronano, so that's my first step? Of course. By the fire was a goblin. That's the best opponent I could find to bring out all your talent. The goblin was leaning against a large rock, resting. It's a moon demon goblin. There are many other goblins lying around, sleeping. It's also the leader. Ronano smiled brightly, patting Asel's shoulder encouragingly. What do you think, Asel? Isn't this great? How do we do it? Ronano's eyes gleamed as if he had found his prey. Now let's begin, shall we? Ronano and Asel sneaked through the grass. Moon demons, a type of goblin that often appears in this area. Most people can easily distinguish them from regular goblins by their yellow skin and deformed bodies. But the true characteristic of moon demons is their obsession with gold and jewels. They like to ambush merchants and rob them. They gather all the stolen items in one place and hold a festival of shining jewels under the night sky. On a full moon night like tonight, Asel trembled in fear. So the real reason we're here is to... Ronano's face lit up with excitement. We're going to steal all that gold, silver, and jewelry. Asel observed the situation and said, I've never heard of goblins gathering jewels in one place and holding a festival. Ronano opened his empty backpack. But how do you know that I have my ways? I can't tell her I saw it in my past life while wandering around. Ronano slung an arm around Asel's shoulder, making him flustered. Anyway, you just need to use your remote control ability to transfer all those jewels into this bag while they're still asleep. Their faces were close. Easy, right? Not easy at all. What if I make a mistake and wake them up? Asel imagined the goblins waking up. Then it's a big problem. He asked Ronano fearfully, making him annoyed. This is too dangerous. We should think it over. You're such a coward. Ronano began to explain the theory to Asel. To get into Philion Academy, we need two things. First, money. We need to pay that insane tuition fee. Second, practical experience. Money is one thing, but experience is even more important. You know, at Philion, it's all nobles who've been professionally trained since birth. If you want to beat those people, there's only one way, Asel. He threatened Asel. That's to risk your life. Those goblins are the perfect opponents. We'll get both money and experience, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Asel sat down crying. Am I wrong? Or do you have a better idea? No, then let's decide on this. He slapped Asel's back encouragingly. All right, let's go. The moonlight shone through the forest leaves. Golden items floated in the air. Then they fell straight into the bag Ronano had opened. More and more items fell in. Just a little more, just a little more. Asel's eyes widened. His cheeks puffed as he used all his strength to transfer the items into the bag. All right, just like that. When Ronano gave the command, the items fell and were released. He smiled broadly as he watched each item fall into the bag. Perfect. Ronano looked inside the bag. This is the last bag. 2 bags are full of gold, silver, and jewels. Everything's full. Ronano was overjoyed. He ruffled Asel's hair, making it a mess. I told you Asel experience is number 1. Yes, we did it. Ronano looked at him and smiled, satisfied. Actually, I wasn't this confident about her adapting so quickly. Asel smiled contentedly. She's more talented than I thought. We did it. You don't know what's behind your back. Ronano smiled like a devil. I've found a great henchman. He reached into the bag to check. All right, the bags are full of gold. Let's go, really. So we're done. Ronano closed the bag. Yes, there's nothing left to do. Let's head back. Before trouble finds us. A crow flew quickly ahead. The thieves chased after the crow. Damn it! They shouted, Hey, you 2 brats! Ronano and Asel were about to leave with the bags when they heard the shout and turned to look. Stop right there! Ronano wondered, who's making such a racket in the middle of the night? The loud noise woke up the goblin leader. What's going on? It looked toward the treasure. It's so late. Where's that noise coming from? The goblin discovered all the treasure in the box was gone. What's this? Where's my glittering treasure? Seeing this, it shouted, waking up all the others. Thieves. They began to gather together. Thieves. Where are they? The goblin leader soon discovered. They looked toward Ronano and Asel leaving. The 2 were panicked when they saw the goblins had discovered them. The goblins roared in anger. They charged toward the 2. This is bad. Asel was terrified. He was so scared that he collapsed to the ground. Seeing this, Ronan immediately prepared for battle. I knew it. It couldn't go smoothly. Asel sat on the ground, looking up at Ronan, trembling in fear. He asked desperately, What now? Ronan, should we throw these bags away and run? No way. Ronan slowly drew his sword. Without this money, how are you going to pay the tuition? How are you going to earn this amount? But that's not important now. The goblins charged forward, their eyes bloodshot with rage, as if they wanted to devour Ronan and Asel alive. Asel screamed, wanting to cling to Ronan. They're coming, Ronan! Ronan looked at his sword, thinking a longsword forged from cheap metal with this weight and hardness. His eyes reflected on the sharp blade. I can probably land 15 strikes. There are about 30 of them. Their sharp claws lunged toward him. Asel behind Ronan shouted Ronan. Ronan raised his sword carefully, assessing the situation. 15 strikes. Ronan swiftly drew his sword. With a single strike, he decapitated the goblins. Blood sprayed from their severed heads. Asela's eyes widened in shock as he watched the goblins' heads roll. Ronan's sword was drenched in their blood. Ronan's eyes gleamed with a predatory excitement. 14. More to go. The crows cawed loudly in the night. At the same time, the final strike was unleashed. Ronan exhaled. This is the last one, right? Not too difficult. Acela looked at the scene before him, unable to believe it. What did I just witness? What just happened? Recalling Ronan's incredible moment, Acela was utterly shocked. He decapitated 3 goblins with a single strike, and the whole group of goblins charging from afar. Ronan disappeared and reappeared in an instant. Just a few sword strikes. Ronan swiftly dealt with the unfortunate goblins. Acela couldn't help but swallow hard. Seeing the dignified figure in the distance, Acela felt a surge of emotion. He hadn't expected to witness a moment like this. Ronan turned to Acela. What are you doing? Planning to sit there daydreaming. Acela snapped out of it and stammered. Sorry, I didn't know. Ronan sheathed his sword. No need to apologize. Hurry up and grab your stuff. He smiled. Let's go home. The night enveloped the silent forest. Ronano and his group were still on their way to the new location. Rubbing his sore shoulder, he groaned. I'm so tired. I thought we could travel comfortably, but who knew it'd be this hard? Acela beside him wasn't faring much better. Placing a hand on Ronan's shoulder, he thought, I've only killed a few goblins, but my muscles are already aching. Is it because I'm still growing? I need to strengthen my physical training when I get home. Suddenly, Acela asked, what was that terrifying scream earlier? Ronan replied, I don't know. He recalled hearing the scream from nowhere, which had ruined their plan to steal the items. Speaking with clear displeasure, he said, It's the middle of the night. What's with all the shouting? Those fools had better be ready. I will make sure they pay for what they've done. The two didn't notice the arrow aimed at them. Immediately, the red arrow was shot without warning. It flew at incredible speed toward Acela. By the time she sensed something and turned around, the arrow was about to pierce her. In a flash, Ronan reacted, catching the arrow with his hand before Acela could even move. He cursed, damn it, they're already attacking. Only then did Acela grasp the situation. She screamed, an arrow. Where did this come from? Ronan remained vigilant. Could it be from that cursed forest? Damn it, why are there so many lunatics there? But suddenly 2 strangers appeared behind them. Who are you 2? The black-haired one spoke. What's this? Humans? And kids, no less. The comment quickly angered Ronano. He smiled and approached Ronano. Sorry, kids. We heard something rustling in the distance and thought it was a monster. As he spoke, his eyes were glued to Ronano's bag full of jewels. He pretended to be apologetic. Oh my, we almost killed someone. He signaled to the man behind him. He feigned concern. Are you 2 hurt? Before he could finish, Ronan interrupted, exposing his nonsense. You 2 can't even hide your intentions. Caught off guard, the 2 were stunned. Ronan continued, Stop the nonsense and answer me. His eyes glowed with the dangerous golden light. Who are you 2? The 2 men shivered at his gaze and screamed in unison. The black-haired one tried to appear harmless, smiling as he approached Ronan. Looking back, it's really our fault. We forgot to introduce ourselves. Sorry, kid. As he spoke, he secretly drew his sword. Then he swung it at Ronan, shouting, Introducing Caribolo. Ronan muttered Caribolo. In a flash, he grabbed the man's arm, making him scream in pain. Then he quickly delivered an uppercut, causing the man to spit blood, his eyes rolling back. Ronan mocked the name of feces. The blond man, seeing his friend quickly defeated, charged forward. You damn brat! Acela, standing to the side, witnessed this and shouted, Ronan! At the same time, she used her magic, shouting a warning, danger. Then she used her invisible hand to restrain the blond man. Feeling his body immobilized, he screamed, What's this? I can't move! Seeing this, Ronan cheered, Oh, Acela! He praised, Well done. Then he kicked the knife out of the blond man's hand. Quickly grabbing the knife, he unleashed a series of invisible slashes. The blond man hadn't even realized what was happening. His body took multiple slashes. He barely managed to say, Who the hell are you? Before he could finish, he collapsed with a cry of pain. Seeing the body fall before her, Acela screamed in shock. She asked Ronan fearfully. Is he dead? Ronan calmly replied. Dead. Should I have spared the life of someone who wanted to kill me? You didn't hear what they said. They're Calibro. Acela replied Calibro. He explained to her poaching, kidnapping, trading live humans. That group can commit any crime. They're the most vicious criminal group in the Empire. So you know he said delivering a fatal blow to the black-haired man. If it weren't for me, your organs would have been taken. Today would have been your secret funeral. Acel, unable to argue, cried out. Ronan interrupted. You knew who they were and still let them live and commit crimes. That's just stupid. Suddenly the bag moved. Ronan said to Acel, Stop causing trouble. Hurry up and grab the stuff. The bag jumped, making him pause. Seeing the bag continuously moving, Ronan wondered, What's wrong with this bag? Why is it moving? Acel replied. Those two must have brought it here. A hunted animal, Ronan speculated as he opened the bag. Yeah, probably. Let's open it right here. As soon as he opened the bag, a pair of sharp blue eyes stared at him. A dark shadow flew out, accompanied by a loud cry that echoed through the forest, leaving the two unable to react. Looking at the strange blue bird before them, both were stunned. Ronan said, What's wrong with this chicken? Its feathers are blue. The bird didn't understand Ronan's words. It cried out. Acel clapped her hands, looking at it with delight. Ronan, it's the first time I've seen a bluebird, he replied. Me too. But that handcuff. Is that Karibolo's handcuff? A sturdy iron handcuff appeared. Karibolo's hunting handcuff. It disrupts mana and restricts the movement of the cuffed person. Ronan pondered. I thought they rarely used it, or only used it when capturing mystical creatures. So perhaps the bluebird. Ronan cast some spell on the bluebird. As it flew, it suddenly spoke. Answer me. The bluebird suddenly screamed, seemingly in disbelief. It shouted, Finally, it's connected. Finally, it's connected. Acel, terrified, clung to Ronan, trembling. Did the bird just talk? Ronan pushed her face away, annoyed. You think it's really talking? It's a communication spell. Ronan thought to himself. It connected as soon as it flew out. He looked at the thing on the ground and continued to speculate. Perhaps that bag can block mana. Are you the owner of this bird? And miraculously, his voice reached a mysterious figure. The figure said, That's right. My name is Varan. I'm currently researching mystical creatures. I'm a guard of Marpes. No matter how many times I tried to communicate, it didn't work. I was about to report it. Lucky you're here. But sorry, who are you? Ronan pushed Acel aside and confidently replied, We're just passers-by. We just fought some poachers, the ones who captured the bird. And then everything was too bloody to describe in words. He recalled the moment he fought against them. I don't know how to explain it. He looked at Marpes and continued, We saved it. The figure exclaimed, What poachers, I thought about it, but I didn't expect it to actually happen. I owe you a great debt. I don't know how to repay you. Acel seemed to have gotten used to it. She approached the bird with excitement. No need, but how do we return the bird to you? It seems exhausted from being tied up. Ronan looked at the shackle on the bird's leg and asked, If we remove this, can it fly? The man replied. Huh? Oh, probably. It remembers its home well, so if you release it. Before he could finish, Ronan drew his sword and said, Then it's settled. He swung his sword in a single slash. Quickly and neatly under the bird's surprised and fearful gaze, it only dared to chirp a few times before the iron shackle shattered into pieces. He sheathed his sword and said, Go back to your father, Bluebird. Don't make him worry. Ronano didn't know that in the bird's eyes, he now looked like a prince from a fairy tale radiating a dazzling aura. The bird stared at him, mesmerized. Ronan looked at it, puzzled. It's pointing its tail right at my face. Ronan looked at the bird in front of him and thought to himself, Why does it look so strange? The man replied. It wants you to pluck a feather before it flies away. It seems that boy wants to see you again. After you pluck a feather from the blue bird, it will be able to lead its owner to you like a compass. Have you plucked its feather yet? If you ever visit the research center, remember to stop by Marpes and see me. I'll repay you. Having said that, the bird bearing a radiant golden mark flew away. He watched in awe, his eyes wide. It's so fast. Acel looked at his hand, puzzled. What are you holding, Ronan? Following her gaze, he looked down at his hand and only now noticed. In his hand was something round. In the middle of the empty forest, he stared at his hand, wondering. What's this? A few days later, at a place resembling a military camp or a bustling market, people were constantly transporting goods. A merchant held up a blue sapphire necklace, examining it closely, then praised it. Oh, the value and craftsmanship of this piece are remarkable. Truly a precious item. I'll offer you 20 gold coins, said the caravan leader, Carabel Dune. Everything you've brought is valuable. Today's my lucky day to meet a customer like you. Asel hid behind Ronan's arm, listening to his confident tone. Finally, someone understands. The other merchants are all swindlers. Just a moment ago, he had an argument with one of them. This thing is worth 5 gold coins. Are you sure your eyes still work, old man? The old man scowled and snapped back. What did you just say? Asel had to pull Ronan back. Calm down, Ronan. He let out a frustrated sigh. I was really angry, but I'm lucky to have met a sharp-eyed merchant like you. It was worth the effort. Carabel happily shook his hand. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. Asel sighed in relief. He asked, do you want to appraise anything else? Ronan reached into his pocket and pulled something out. How about this? I'm not planning to sell it. I'm just curious about what it is. The item he presented shimmered like the Milky Way and was oval-shaped. The merchant adjusted his glasses in surprise. Ronan looked at it, recalling that night. The bluebird left this. An egg. At first, I thought it had dirtied my hand, but that was not the case. Do you remember? You were annoyed at the time and said with sarcasm, "This chicken dares to repay me with something this ridiculous." To test it, Ronan shouted and threw it at a rock. This is crazy, he thought, throwing it to see what would happen. To his surprise, the egg even shattered the rock, and he realized it was incredibly hard. Both of them stared at the shattered rock in shock. He watched as the merchant examined the egg. I'm not sure if this is an egg or something else, but it's definitely a rare mystical creature's product. It could be a priceless treasure. Carabel studied it for a long time, his expression serious. The color and texture? Don't tell me! Ronan smiled brightly as he looked at him. Yet right after that, the man delivered a blunt statement that felt like a cold slap in the face. Ronan reached out to take the egg back, denying the offer. Of course not. The merchant scratched his head and laughed. Yeah, I don't know what it is either. I think it's a rare item. Why don't you take it to a professional appraiser? Ronan sighed and put it back in his bag. Yeah, I should do that. Now I'm curious. I probably won't sell it. Asel pondered beside him. So is that a hardened piece of dung? Ronan continued the conversation. Do you sell books about Philion? The merchant asked Philion Academy. Ronan pointed at Asel. Yes, we're planning to take the entrance exam for Philion, but we don't know much about it. The merchant's eyes lit up. The entrance exam, perfect timing. My daughter is also preparing for the entrance exam. She might be able to help you too. She should be back soon. At that moment, a female voice called from a distance. What's going on, Dad? Who are they, Carabel? And the two turned around. He smiled. Ah, she's back. This is my only daughter, Maria. The girl with long hair blowing in the wind looked at them. Ronan was startled. Maria, is it her? Carabel called her over. Maria, say hello to these two. They're big clients I just dealt with. She was surprised. Really, these babies? Hearing this, he was shocked and scolded her. What kind of language is that, kid? Sorry about that. She grew up in the caravan, so she's a bit rough with her words. Asel waved her hand. It's fine. But Ronan was sure. Before he could finish his question, he saw Ronan walking over. He approached her and asked, Are you? Maria? She looked at him. What's up? Ronan continued Maria sen right. She was confused but admitted. Yes, but how do you know? Ronan was sweating, puzzled. It's strange. You look so much like her, like someone I know. Hey, I'll ask you one more question. Come closer. He gestured to his ear. She leaned in closer. Wait, what do you want to ask? Ronan whispered. Do you have that thing down there? That bird. She looked at him like he was an idiot. What nonsense did I just hear? Ronan, however, seemed very serious, waiting for her answer. Maria fell into deep thought. A treasure. He didn't seem to understand her angry expression, and continued. No matter how you look at it, it seems like you don't have it. Could that old man have another child he didn't know about? While he was deep in thought, he turned his head and was immediately slapped in the face. Maria shouted angrily, Be quiet, you lunatic! Ronan even predicted this slap. This feels familiar. That person, Countess Maria Sensen. Maria Sen, when I was still a disciplined soldier at a place called Armalen, Maria was in charge of supplies. With an excellent work ethic and an open personality, she could talk to anyone without hesitation. Maria was an admirable person. But when it came to discussing private parts in the boys' conversations, Maria would suddenly become unusually angry. And there was this inexplicable action of slapping me in the face. I've always been curious about the reason. If I could meet Maria again, I'd want to ask her about it. But that opportunity never came, because Maria passed away before I could ask. But I never expected to find the answer here. "Countess Maria, are you a woman?" She looked at him and shouted, "What are you laughing at? Was that slap not enough? Then I'll give you another one." Ronan got angry and tapped her head. "Stop it, you. Do you think that just because I let you slap me once, you can keep pushing your limits? I allowed it, because I was wrong earlier. But that doesn't mean I will tolerate it any further." Before he could finish, Maria head-butted his chin and shouted, "What if I hit you a second time, huh, you lunatic? What are you going to do now?" The two grabbed each other's hair. Ronan was at his wits' end. "Seriously, you're crazy. Get lost." The two of them clashed fiercely. The other two stood frozen speechless as they watched the scene unfold. "Stop fighting!" They quickly ran out to stop the two. A moment later, Asel stared blankly. "What's wrong with these two? They just fought like it was life or death." Maria rubbed her hair and asked, "So these are the things left for you to use?" Ronan rested his chin on his hand and replied, "I need to check if they're okay." Asela looked at them thinking, "But now Ronan is chatting with Maria. If they're not okay, I'll go buy something else." Asel looked at the scene before her, utterly confused. "They're getting along now. They're getting along now." Maria drew her sword and asked 3 swords and a magic wand. "Why did they give you 3 swords? Carrying them all must be difficult." He calmly said, "Well, just in case. I tend to be a bit rough when using a sword. It's a very sturdy material, which is why it's often sought after by famous knights. I'm not sure how strong your swordsmanship is, but this sword won't break easily." She handed the sword to Ronan, who took it and thought, "Oh, so this is a black iron sword. It was my favorite weapon in the past." Maria continued, "But this wand has a very good magic stone attached to it. So leaving this for you." "Is this girl a mage?" Maria smiled at Asel, who nodded. "Yes, that's right." She asked, "What kind of magic do you use?" Asel shyly replied, "Remote control magic." Maria was impressed. "Remote control? That's impressive. If you do well, you might even get a scholarship." Asel scratched her head and laughed. "Really?" Maria looked at him. "Now the question is, what technique will you demonstrate in the practical exam?" Ronan was dumbfounded. "Technique? You don't know. To get into Phi Leon, you need to impress the professors and show them your technique in the practical exam. Of course, the theory exam is very difficult, but it can't compare to the practical exam. So the point I'm making is if you do well in the practical exam, you'll pass. In other words, if you can't prove your worth, you should forget about getting into the academy." Ronano sighed. "What a swordsman just needs to be good at swordsmanship, right? Oh my. So what do people usually demonstrate?" Maria said, "Well, most nobles showcase their family's secret techniques, while most warriors and other candidates demonstrate their personal mana combat techniques." Ronan interrupted. "Wait, what? Mana young swordsmen at this age can use mana, even if they're not mages." Maria looked at him in surprise. "What are you talking about? If you're a future student of Philion, using it is a given. You can sense mana too, right? And with that amount of mana, you can utilize it in actual combat. That's the most basic of basics." "What's with that expression, Ronan?" She looked at him full of question marks, as if hearing it for the first time. She pointed at him trembling. "Don't tell me you don't know how to sense mana." Ronan casually asked, "What isn't it similar to using auras?" Maria was completely shocked. She covered her face and collapsed, muttering, "Oh my god, I'm talking to someone like this, and he's babbling about getting into Philion. Auras and mana are similar." "How can you say that?" Ronan placed a hand on his neck and replied softly, "Maybe I've already known about it." "You're overreacting." Maria stood up. "This is pointless. Get out now." Ronan looked at her puzzled. "Huh. Why all of a sudden?" She didn't answer him and continued, "Also, can I borrow these swords? I left my sword at the blacksmith's. Ronan looked at Maria holding the sword and could only say, "Wait, why are you suddenly like this? What if you damage my sword?" Maria smiled and walked away. "Don't worry, the fight will end before that happens. If it does, I'll compensate you double, no triple." "How's that?" Ronan sighed, exasperated. "Oh my God." Maria looked at him seriously. "So stop babbling and follow me. I'll give you special training." Mana is the source of natural power like air. It's a natural energy that exists everywhere in the world. However, that doesn't mean everyone can use it. To use mana, you need to see and sense the mana within yourself and be able to utilize it. To reach this stage, you need to train your innate talent. Countless personal reasons can affect it, but usually it takes a year of training to start sensing it. And the future students of Philion have all passed this stage after training their own mana techniques and applying to Philion. Do you understand now? Don't tell me you can't even distinguish between auras and mana, yet you want to get into Philion. That's nonsense. Maria held the sword and looked at him. She sighed. All right, from your perspective, auras is also a type of mana, but the difference between them is like heaven and earth. Ronan asked, "What's the difference?" Even all the famous geniuses who trained tirelessly for at least 15 years, shedding blood non-stop, could only awaken that innate power auras. Maria asked again. "So do you understand a bit now?" Ronan replied cluelessly. "Well, not exactly. In my memory, I've sometimes encountered them on the battlefield. They boasted about being auras users and possessing extraordinary power. They were really annoying, but in the end they weren't that scary. Because if you cut off their heads, anyone would die." Maria interrupted his train of thought. "All right, let's save the explanation for later. Let's get started. I think you'll learn faster if you absorb it with your body instead of your head." Ronano silently guessed that she was just a young girl. Instantly, Maria charged towards Ronano. He widened his eyes in surprise at the terrifying speed. The sound of swords clashing created a deafening noise. He glanced at her thinking, "Oh, that's quite impressive," facing her murderous expression. Ronan and Maria Sen were in an intense duel. 3 swords clashing against each other. Ronan thought to himself, "Oh, look, my sword and hers repel each other with considerable force." He suddenly thought, "She's so young, yet she's this strong, and she's using dual swords too." Maria was somewhat worried, unsure, but could this be some kind of mana combat technique? She saw him stunned and wondered, "What's wrong with this guy?" The two continued to fiercely duel with their swords. She thought to herself, "I was planning to finish him off in one move. I wanted to show him the power of mana and make him quit the test. It would be better than enduring humiliation at the test site, but am I the one being pushed back? Could it be the skill of someone who can't use mana? No, that can't be." Suddenly he asked, "What are you thinking about?" In her carelessness, she was pushed back and her sword was knocked away once again. His eyes suddenly lit up like a cat's in the night. He raised his sword and shouted, "Stop blocking dodge!" She was caught off guard as his sword swung down, but luckily she managed to dodge in time. She jumped back and slid away, the sound of the sword scraping against the ground, creating a piercing noise. She sighed and said, "If I had been slower, something might have happened. You're not ordinary at all, are you?" He smiled faintly and replied, "You too." As he sheathed his sword, he continued, "Aside from mana, you're quite talented in swordsmanship, but your center of gravity is a bit unstable." Then he turned and walked away, adding, "If you fix that, you'll be much better." She was surprised and asked, Where are you going?" She angrily pointed her sword at him and said, "Don't think you've won." He calmly replied, "Whatever. Remember your promise." "You said it, didn't you? 3 times. Her eyes widened in surprise and she stammered, I never said that." He ignored her and continued, "Remember to prepare the price for the sword." She was in a state of shock and didn't know what to say when someone's finger lightly touched her back. The person hesitated, and it turned out to be a cell. He understood her feelings at that moment and said with a smile, "Well done." Suddenly, someone called out, "Hurry up, Acel, I'm so tired." He stammered, She stood straight and wondered, "Who are they?" He saw Acel just arriving and asked, "Why are you so late?" She could only smile. The sky today was cloudy and very clear, signaling that it would be a beautiful day. Everyone was busy transporting goods. And someone said, "I'm just here to get the money." He and Asel, with surprised expressions, stared at what was in front of them. He asked, "But what is that?" "Books?" In front of them were neatly arranged books in 2 bags. She replied, "Yes, these are what we need to study for Philion's theory test. I've compiled them." She made a teasing face and continued, "No need. The test is in a month." Asel's eyes lit up like stars, and he calmly asked, "We need them. But why did you do this?" He intended to open the sword in front of her and threatened, "If you're plotting something, finish what you're saying." She replied, "No, don't worry. I just like you guys." She laughed and continued, "I did this because I want you to pass. Of course it's free." Asel's face looked mesmerized. He sighed and said, "If it's free, then—" "All right," she interrupted him. "If possible, I'd even like to tutor you 2 privately, but I have to go now." She lightly punched his chest and said with a smile, "Study hard. If you still fail after this, I won't let it slide." "Got it." He smiled and replied, "You should study hard too." She got on the carriage, waved, and said with a smile, "Then I'll see you in the capital on the day of the test. Remember to finish reading the books." He looked down at his palm and thought, "I need to train this weak body. I also need to study because I can't rely on luck." But this feeling isn't too bad. Ronan's life after returning home remained similar to the past, but there were small changes. He ate with Iriel to the point where she was surprised. He ate so heartily that his stomach was always full after every meal. Iriel happily said, "My brother eats so well." Besides that, he also started hunting monsters in the outskirts of the village, increasing his stamina and adaptability. He gently sheathed his sword and sighed. On the ground were scattered monsters he had defeated. He said to himself, "This is enough for today." He hunted so many monsters that there were none left lurking around the village. In addition, he also studied something unimaginable for a disciplined soldier. He grumbled, "Wait, why do I have to remember the eating rules of the Northerners?" Even though he didn't know the outcome, he still did his best. A month quickly passed, and today was a beautiful day, signaling good luck. Valon, the capital city, appeared with its majestic palaces and grand houses. In the center of the capital was the empire's top educational institution, the small city of the White Tower. Asel said in surprise, "This is Philion." "Philion is so beautiful." "It's huge," Ronan said. "What are you doing standing in the middle of the road?" Asel, "Don't act like a country bumpkin. Let's go in. We're late for the test now." Asel, hearing Ronan's scolding, hesitated and said, "Sorry." He heard it and asked curiously, "Why are you talking like that?" Asel replied, "Nothing, I'm just amazed. In just a month you've grown so much, Ronan." He put his hand on his hip helplessly and asked. Again, then he lightly bumped Asel's head and said, "Stop talking nonsense. Hurry up and go in." Asel, having his head bumped, shouted. He turned around and thought, "Now I remember we're in Philion, so maybe I'll meet him." The person Ronan was thinking of was the sword saint Slefen, a descendant of Grancia, a prestigious swordsmanship family considered the Empire's strongest genius. He thought, he's probably around my age, so maybe I'll meet him at the test site. But it's not important. He was thinking when Asel asked, "But Ronan, do you have that?" He asked curiously. "Huh? What are you talking about?" she said. "The bird feather from last time. It can lead us to the owner of that bird," he replied. "Ah, I thought you meant something else." He took out the bird feather and said, "I brought it because I remembered that person lives in the capital. I plan to visit him after the test." The feather pointed upwards, and he was stunned, exclaiming, "The highest floor." Sunlight shone through the glass window, accompanied by a sigh, and someone's voice. "It's not easy, and I'm still not used to this professor job. Should I just go back to research?" The bird, perched on this person's shoulder, chirped happily. He gently stroked the small bird and said cheerfully, "Are you cheering me on, Marpis? I must continue to strive to repay the hero who saved you." The person speaking was Philion's zoology professor, Baron Panacere, whose characteristic was that of a lion. He gently asked the small bird, "All right, shall I open the window for some fresh air? And if our hero visits today, it will be quite troublesome." "Huh. What's that?" Outside the window was Ronan with a fierce expression smiling at him and saying, "I haven't even knocked yet, but it opened by itself. Oh, it's the blue bird from before. So you're the owner. A beast man, huh?" Baron Panacere and the blue bird stood frozen in fear. The fearful cries of the lion and the bird merged into one echoing from the palace. Baron Panacere, terrified, hugged Marpis and said, "Who are you? How did you get in here? This is one of the highest floors." Ronan scratched his ear and complained, "You scared me to death. I thought I'd go deaf." Asel climbed in through the window and said, "That's why I told you to take the stairs." He hugged it tightly and asked, "Are you following my Marpis?" At this moment he took out a blue feather. Baron Panacere was astonished. The feather, as if he recognized something, stopped him. "Wait, this is it. You are the saviors who freed my dear one." Now the three of them sat down properly. He said, "Oh my, in front of my benefactors, I've been so rude. Please forgive me." Ronan said, "I already said it's fine. Why do you keep bringing it up if you want to be clear it's his fault?" He climbed out the window himself. Asel looked at him and said, "Huh, who told me to use the remote control technique because taking the stairs was troublesome?" It was Ronan. He pinched Asel's cheek, making him let out a cry. Ronan said, "Quiet. But the important thing is I never imagined that a rare half-beast man lion would be the owner of that bird." He continued, still holding Asel's cheeks, making him struggle to break free. "And you're also a professor at Philion." Baron Panacere scratched his cheek awkwardly and replied, "I'm also surprised. I didn't expect our hero to be a candidate for this academy. Oh, I'm so embarrassed. If I had known earlier, I would have written a recommendation letter for you. But today is the test day. I hope nothing goes wrong. But if you fail," he grumbled. "Why are you saying such unlucky words?" It's fine. We're here to ask something. You know we don't have much time." Ronan took out a purple object and asked, "What is this?" The blue bird laid it. He adjusted his glasses in confusion. "Huh? Marpis laid what?" "This is a phantom bird egg." Baron Panacere took the egg and asked again. "You're saying Marpis laid it?" He calmly replied. "So what? Birds laying eggs is nothing surprising," he stammered. This is not just an ordinary bird. It's a phantom bird. But what's even more surprising is that I don't know what will hatch from this egg." Ronan was puzzled. "What are you talking about?" "If it's a bird egg, it will hatch into a bird, right?" Baron Panacere shook his head and refuted. "Phantom birds are different. Depending on the surrounding environment, the phantom bird will absorb unique mana and then lay the egg. For example, if the surroundings are lava, the egg will hatch into a fire phoenix. In the nest of the phantom bird, the egg will take on the shape of that monster. And there are also things that hatch from the egg that bear no resemblance to birds at all. Of course, if I could analyze the mana radiating from that egg, predicting the form of the phantom bird inside wouldn't be impossible. But this egg," he looked at the egg, which was now glowing with vibrant mixed energies, and said, "It carries a lot of chaotic mana fields like smelting alloy. They melt and blend together. It's awkward, but now it's hard to be sure what this egg is." Ronan was surprised. "Oh my, it's just an egg, yet you're putting so much thought into it." He turned to Marvis and asked, "Where did you wander off to, you rascal, to lay this egg?" It tilted its head and chirped a few times. He was stunned. I've never met a bird this shameless. Baron Panacere, with a serious expression, said, "So I'm asking you, sir, could you take care of this egg?" Ronan replied. "Huh? Well, I don't have a problem with it." He asked, "What do you think?" "It's something valuable, right?" he answered. "Of course." A phantom bird only lays an egg once in its lifetime. But if it laid this egg in front of its savior, surely Marpis must have sensed something special. He looked at it happily, scratching Marpis' neck, making it let out a pleased chirp. Then Baron Panacere said, "I also want to respect the companion who has been with me for so long, so I'll entrust this egg to you." Ronan took the egg, looked at it, and said, "No problem. I'm also curious about what will hatch from this shell. It's getting late and everything is settled. May we take our leave?" He stood up to leave. Baron Panikir, seeing this, said, Wait a moment. I've been thinking about what to give you, but I just remembered something interesting. He turned to fetch it. Baron Panikir held out a scroll and said, Here, take this. It will help you incubate the egg. Both of them looked confused. He asked, What is this? A while later in the practical test hall, the Galarian Palace. Everyone was gathered, some praying, some checking their weapons. The proctor stepped out and announced, Candidate number 111 has completed the test. The proctor stepped out and announced, Candidate number 111 has completed the test. The door opened and he walked in. Ronano thought 112 already. Next is me. He crossed his legs, one hand propping his chin, and said, They're making us wait so long. Don't you think so, Maria? The blonde next to him replied, Every test is like this. Ronan looked at her and asked, Why are you wearing that outfit? Isn't it uncomfortable? Maria cheerfully replied, Oh, I did it on purpose. Philion is a private academy for all nobles after all. Maria replied cheerfully, Did that on purpose. Philion is a private academy for all the nobles after all. Yes, in the future they'll become high-value clients, so of course I shouldn't dress carelessly, right? She playfully winked and made an okay gesture with her hand. He sighed helplessly. You really are very thoughtful. Maria sat down on the chair and lamented, It would be nice if our dear one were here. What a shame. Ronan, with an indifferent expression, replied, How could that be? The magic test hall is in a different place. If he weren't crying, I'd be happy. The proctor continued to announce candidate number 112 has completed the test. Next, please welcome candidate number 113. The guy from earlier stepped out with a dry expression, muttering, I'm done for. Ronan stood up and said, It's my turn now. Maria cheerfully encouraged, Don't worry, just do your best as I told you. If you fail, I won't let it slide. He walked forward, waving his hand, and replied, I know, thanks for the enthusiastic support. I'll be back later. Ronan seriously observed, thinking, Are these people the professors of Philion? In front of him were 5 professors, sitting with a majestic demeanor. Ronan looked at each of them, evaluating in his mind. They all look outstanding, but among them, the old man in the center. He looked at the old man, whose face was gentle, sitting in the middle of the 5. The headmaster of Philion Academy, the Grand Mage Cravar Cratier. Ronan then looked to the left, thinking, That woman also exudes an overwhelming aura. In my previous life, I rarely felt such pressure. That's the swordsmanship instructor, the Great Sword, Saint Naviros. He bowed and said, I'm Ronan. The headmaster said, It's a pleasure to meet you, Ronan. I am the headmaster of Philion Academy, Cravar Cratier. You will fight a magical puppet so you can showcase your skills. Have you decided what technique you will show us? He looked at the puppet and replied, Yes, nothing special. Just a single swift sword strike. I think that's enough. The professors looked at him in surprise. One of them said, A simple slash without using mana. There hasn't been a candidate like that before. Those guys only evaluated the appearance of the magical puppets and said some foolish things. He joked with the person next to him. The old man beside him replied, If it's a candidate from a distant country, they might not know. Even though it looks like that the puppet has defensive abilities to counter auras and can recover quickly. It's a masterpiece of magic, the blond old man whispered. Even the sword of that genius Schlieffen left no trace. I wonder what this guy plans to show us. The person next to him replied, Who knows what if he splits it in half? The blond professor chuckled. You're really funny. The headmaster looked at them with concern, thinking I heard all of that. He's right in front of you, yet you're saying such inappropriate things. What if this child proves you wrong? He opened his eyes wide in surprise. What's the matter? How does he have such composure at this age? Ronan stomped his foot to gain momentum, and the ground was pushed up slightly. He charged forward and struck the puppet's neck with precision. The 2 female professors were astonished, their mouths agape. Ronan sheathed his sword and looked at the professors, saying, I'm done. The 2 professors chuckled. Heavens, who would have thought a single sword strike would be enough? The other continued. Scoring this part is a bit vague. Do you think so, headmaster? The headmaster was now too astonished to speak. Suddenly, Navarros stomped her foot on the table, startling him. Professor Navarros. She charged forward with a fierce gaze aimed directly at Ronan's neck. He didn't dodge. Navarros stopped. Ronan looked down and said, "Are you trying to scare me?" she asked. "Who are you? Who taught you that swordsmanship?" Navarros's face was filled with murderous intent. Ronan asked in confusion. "Who taught me? What do you mean?" Navarros said. "Wait, I'll change the question. Did you see my sword path?" He replied with an indifferent expression. "Ah, yes, your swordsmanship is truly top-notch. Drawing the sword so suddenly is difficult, yet you swung it 3 times. Navarros said. "Exactly 3 times, just like what you showed us with that arrogant sword strike of yours." Ronan looked at her in surprise. Navarros continued. "Did you think I wouldn't notice that clumsy swordsmanship of yours? You deliberately slowed down the last strike to make sure we couldn't see it clearly, as if you were being considerate. How insolent! Have you forgotten where you are?" The headmaster silently looked away. The professors were quite puzzled. What are we watching here? Ronan glanced around, thinking, there's a misunderstanding here. I only adjusted my strength because I thought the sword wouldn't withstand the final strike. Looking at her expression, it seems she won't believe me. Navarros sheathed her sword and turned away, saying, "I'll remember your face." He was stunned. That's it? She turned her head and growled, "I will personally teach you a lesson." Ronan thought in fear. So it's not over yet. Navarros, frustrated, plopped down on the chair. The headmaster looked at her, thinking, "I will personally teach you a lesson." It seems she wants to take him as her disciple now. Heavens, it looks like I need to pay more attention. He looked at Ronan and said, "Well done, Ronan. Then we'll end today's test with an open-ended question. Just say what you think is most reasonable." "Ronan, what do you want to learn when you come to Philion Academy?" Ronan seriously said, "I wonder how to answer your question, so that I won't regret it." "That's the first thing I want to learn." The headmaster widened his eyes at this answer. "Yes?" He was silent for a moment, then said, "I understand. You may leave now, Ronan." The gate closed. Cravar Kratier. How to not regret it. What a troublesome answer. I don't know how I'm supposed to teach that kid. The professor next to him spoke up. "What's going on?" "First Professor Navarros, and now you. What did that kid do to make you two like this? Did he use some high-level trick?" he said. "A trick. That is one way to interpret it." The magical puppet suddenly split apart. The headmaster continued. "Actually, perhaps we should call him a prodigy." The 2 professors widened their eyes in astonishment and exclaimed, "Huh!" The magical puppet's head fell off and rolled on the ground. Now Ronan was thinking, the sword of that lady just now? Even my past self might not have been sure of victory. I think I've met a worthy opponent, but it seems the road is still long. He smiled to encourage himself, thinking, this is a good start to Philion. If it's here, I'm sure I'll learn a lot. Now there's only the written test left. I've memorized everything over the past month, so this should be a breeze. A while later, Ronan, with a pale and exhausted face, muttered, "It was easy, right? I'm done for this time. It's really over." Indeed, he looked no different from someone lamenting their fate while hugging their knees. Maria was shocked. I didn't expect him to not even finish half of the test. "How did this happen?" "I remember telling him to check what's in the bag." Asel replied, "About that." He took the stuff to study and left the bag in one spot. He was so focused that he forgot about the bag entirely. With tears in his eyes, he stammered, "It's my fault. If I had reminded him earlier, this wouldn't have happened." Maria was so angry she clenched her teeth and said, "My goodness, how can someone that clueless even survive? So he's been like this since the test ended. When will the results be out?" She lifted Ronan's hands to encourage him. Stop frowning. The practical test is more important anyway. It's fine with your skills, I'm sure." Suddenly, a magic circle appeared. Someone exclaimed, "Look! The results are out!" The 3 of them looked over. A long list appeared in midair. Asela asked, "Is that the list of those who passed?" Maria worriedly said, "It's faster than I thought." The top read Magic Department. Asel rank 12, Practical rank 1 Theory, rank 3. Martial Arts Department Maria Sen. Carabel rank 9. Practical rank. 9 Theory. The two looked at each other for a moment. Maria suddenly teared up. She wrapped her arms around his neck and shouted, "We passed. Acela, you even got first place in the theory test." Maria patted his head. Acela exclaimed, "Huh! Really?" She replied, "It's written there. Even though there are 2 people tied with you, you're still first place. Well done, my dear." Maria vigorously rubbed Acele's head. Acele excitedly said, "It must be because I was lucky," as if remembering something. Maria turned her head and asked, "Hey, Ronan, what's your rank?" Ronan stood frozen there. His face looked devastated and weak as he said, "I knew it. My name isn't there. How could someone like me get into the academy?" Maria was shocked and stammered. "Really, Ronan?" Acele said. "No way." She moved closer and widened Ronano's eyes, shouting, "Don't joke. Have you checked carefully?" "No way," Ronano replied. "I did. I read every name. I told you I did terribly." Suddenly something flew past. It hit the school gate, startling everyone. Ronan looked up and asked, "What was that flash just now?" Maria replied, "It's fireworks to mark the end of the entrance exam specifically for the top scorer." A phoenix, a bird with blazing feathers, appeared. It flapped its wings and shot out a fireball which flew straight toward Ronan. He was surprised, then a huge explosion occurred. Luckily, Ronan was unharmed. In midair, 5 words appeared. Top scorer in martial arts. Ronan first in practical. 5-7 hard 12th in theory. Rank 57-12 in theory. All 3 of them were shocked. In unison, Maria and Acele hugged him tightly and shouted, "Congratulations," Maria said. "So you're the top scorer in martial arts," she continued. "Well done, Ronan. You're the top scorer." Ronan tensed up and let out an uncomfortable sound. She patted his head and said, "I knew you were a genius." Ronan smiled. "I guess I have a good eye for people, huh?" Suddenly he realized, "Oh wait, if I'm ranked first, that means he lost to me, right? With his personality, there's no way he would let this slide so easily. Something about this is definitely strange." At this moment, a black-haired man approached from behind Ronan. He spoke up. "So it's you, the one who got first place in the practical exam." He was startled, thinking, "Damn, I knew it. Do we have to meet like this? I knew it. Do we have to meet like this?" "The sword, Saint Schlieffen?" A man with cold blue eyes stared intently at Ronano. After the top scorer's results appeared, Schlieffen Granzia walked toward Ronano from a distance. The other students were extremely surprised and in awe when they saw him. "He's Schlieffen. I didn't expect to meet the rising star of the empire here." Maria Sen saw Schlieffen approaching them and informed Ronano, "Ronano, it seems he wants to talk to you." Acele, standing beside him, trembled in fear at his imposing aura. The atmosphere around him is terrifying. Ronano gritted his teeth in annoyance, thinking, "This is so troublesome. He's still the same as before. He can't stand anyone being better at swordsmanship than him." Having been reborn, I understand his personality very well. His arrogant attitude and sharp gaze, as if he wants to devour Ronan, only confirm his ferocity. Ronano didn't want to invite trouble, so he tried to avoid Schlieffen as much as possible. "I need to avoid conflict." Even though I anticipated my ranking, I still pretended not to know and said I ranked first. I had no idea. He still didn't say a word, maintaining that same frowning expression as he stared at Ronan. At this moment, Schlieffen clenched his fist and asked, "Why are you lying?" Ronan sighed helplessly and replied, "What do you mean?" "I said I didn't know, so I didn't know. Why do you need proof? Don't cause trouble. Just move on." One of his hands gripped the holy sword at his side as he repeated Ronan's words. "Proof, huh? Fine, let me show you." With that, Schlieffen immediately drew his sword and swung it toward Ronan, but Ronan easily blocked the strike with his own sword and dodged the blade. Ronan was also terrified by Schlieffen's actions. Maria and Acele, standing behind and witnessing everything, were also scared and shouted, "Ronano!" Schlieffen deliberately did this to confirm his suspicions. Finally he spoke. "Is this enough? If you weren't ranked first, you wouldn't have been able to block that strike." The other students also saw this scene and exclaimed in surprise, They're fighting. Show me the skill that allowed you to surpass me, he seriously demanded. Ronano, angered by Schlieffen's crazy actions, cursed, "You lunatic!" Unable to hold back any longer, Ronan complied with his wish. "If you want it here, it is." In the blink of an eye, he swiftly swung his sword toward Schlieffen. Ronan's face at this moment also became extremely terrifying. "Let me show you." He leaped forward, directing his sword toward where Schlieffen stood. However, Schlieffen was also stunned by the incoming sword force. Instinctively, he swung his holy sword to block. Of course, someone as skilled in swordsmanship as Schlieffen could also block Ronan's attack. He seemed forced by Schlieffen to attack. He had struck just to satisfy Schlieffen and said, "There, you happy now, you monster." Outsiders would think he easily blocked it, but only Schlieffen truly understood. The hand holding his sword wouldn't stop trembling. But Schlieffen couldn't help but acknowledge Ronan's swordsmanship talent. "No wonder you scored so high. Your technique is impressive." But as I thought, he won't admit defeat. He charged forward again, wanting to compete with Ronan. "That much isn't enough to defeat me. Wait." He blocked Schlieffen's sword while being scared into shouting to calm him down. "Wait, you've lost your mind. Calm down." Schlieffen knew full well that Ronano's abilities weren't so easy to deal with. "Don't hide your true strength." His face now also became extremely terrifying as he stared at Ronano. "I can't accept this." With that, Schlieffen swung his sword to attack once more. Ronano also struggled to block and let out a cry. In his mind, he was filled with countless curses at Schlieffen's blind obsession with swordsmanship. "You idiot! Are you charging in to die? This is why I didn't want to run into you. At this rate, he'll start using auras." The situation was gradually spiraling out of control as Schlieffen furiously attacked Ronan. "This is bad," creating a whirlwind with just a single sword strike. The intense auras, known as the Sword Storm, were something Ronan, based on his past life's memories, knew was extremely dangerous. With his current strength, it would be difficult to block. "I can't resist it." On top of that, while fighting Schlieffen in midair, Ronan suddenly turned and ran away. It seemed he had some plan in mind to deal with him. Schlieffen's face was filled with murderous intent, as if he wanted to devour Ronan. Unable to understand Ronan's plan, he shouted, "What are you doing? Turning your back on your opponent in a duel." Ronan's sword hand suddenly rested on Asel's shoulder. Asel, who had been intently watching, was confused by his action and froze. Schlieffen still chased after him, shouting, "You think I'll miss?" Asel, terrified, stammered Ronan. "Why me?" Schlieffen, seeing Ronan's action, was both angry and disdainful. He cursed, "You coward, using a lady as a shield while calling yourself a knight." But Asel, seeing that he had misunderstood his gender, was flustered and explained, "I'm a boy." Ronan laughed. Clever. He had likely succeeded in tricking Schlieffen. He sighed. "Just as I thought, even on the brink of death, that attitude of yours hasn't changed. You'd still protect the honor of a knight." With that, Ronan laughed loudly and charged forward, punching him in the face with considerable force. Asel, who had been used as a tool to hit Schlieffen, was also terrified and wide-eyed. After that, Schlieffen was hit so hard that he groaned in pain. He painfully knelt down, clutching his face, and even had to use his holy sword to support himself. Ronan seized the opportunity and shouted at Asel and Maria, causing him to tremble in fear. At that moment, Asel and Maria ran. Ronan's shout echoed loudly, as Schlieffen, clutching his face, looked around in confusion, not understanding what was happening. He shouted loudly, calling out to Ronan's group, "Wait!" By the time Schlieffen regained his composure, they had already run far away. The security team approached from a distance. A bald man ran over aggressively. "What's going on over there? I heard there was a fight." Before he could finish his sentence, he was stunned by the scene before him. Schlieffen's face was injured from Ronan's punch, blood streaming from his nose. The bald man panicked. "Oh my! Sir Schlieffen," he hurriedly asked. "Are you all right? Who did this to you? Please describe those people. The Academy security team will pursue them." Before the bald man could finish, Schlieffen interrupted. "No need to be polite. Right now, I'm not the son of the Duke's family, but just a candidate with the status of a commoner, he explained to reassure the security team. You don't need to worry. This was a fair duel. I'll handle it myself. Schlieffen continued as he brushed off the dust from his clothes and regained his composure. Suddenly, something unexpected caught his attention. It was the holy sword, which now had a crack. It's cracked. This sword is made from the highest grade of midrin. I thought his swordsmanship skills weren't remarkable, but Schlieffen had underestimated Ronan's true abilities. It made him carefully reconsider the recent duel between them, leaving him even more astonished. I didn't expect him to damage the sword like this. He let out a light chuckle. Interesting. Ronan Schlieffen seemed to have his own plans. The more he thought about it, the more curious he became about this person. I'll remember this name, Schlieffen said to himself. The next day, early in the morning, the sky was clear in the outskirts of the capital. The Surmus Forest. Ronan walked in step by step, looking at the map in his hand, and saying to Asel, "It's definitely around here." Asel, following behind, was so exhausted he was panting heavily. Asele wiped his sweat and weakly asked Ronano, "Are we doing the right thing?" Ronano, hearing his question, turned around and replied, "What do you mean?" Asel brought up the duel between Ronan and Schlieffen the day before. "I'm talking about the guy you fought yesterday. I heard he's the heir of the Grantia ducal family, the family second only to the royal family. You broke his nose." Asel's heart was filled with unease, his whole body trembling as he asked, "What if he seeks revenge?" Ronan, standing beside him, calmly looked at the map and reassured him. "Don't worry. He's a good person, just obsessed with swordsmanship. He always maintains principles and beliefs, serving as the ideal model of a hero who protects the weak. Or one could say, the perfect image of a noble." Having lived a second life, Ronan could easily understand Schlieffen's personality and nature. Ronan accurately predicted what he would say to the security team yesterday. He explained to Asel. He probably said what happened yesterday was a fair duel. Otherwise, we'd be behind bars by now. Ronan's explanations gradually calmed Asel down, making him reconsider. Thinking about it, you're right. He brushed this aside and returned to their main issue. But more importantly, look over there. I think we've arrived, the ley line Professor Barron mentioned. Before them was a shimmering blue river. Ronan cheered joyfully upon finding the place the professor mentioned, the Pinardo Spring. For some reason, mana flows throughout the world and gathers in certain places, creating areas called ley lines. With its existence, mana permeates the surrounding area. An ordinary stone can become a high-grade mana stone, and a weed can transform into a miraculous herb. It's famous for its wondrous effects. Ronan looked at the flowing water before him, marveling at its immeasurable value. Most people try to seize it. That professor is truly generous. Recalling when Professor Varan gave us the map to the ley line and the task he assigned us, he actually sent us here to incubate an egg. What do you think, Asel? Do you feel the difference? Ronan asked. Asel, sensing the change in his own power, looked at the magic in his hand and replied, "This is the first time I've felt such dense mana concentrated in one place. If it's here, I can easily cast spells stronger than usual." Asel was mesmerized, watching the magic swirling in his hand. He also noticed the purple light emanating from the bag containing the egg that Ronan carried on his side. "The egg in your bag seems different from before. It's absorbing magical energy at an astonishing rate. The purple egg is vigorously absorbing mana. It seems to like the mana here." "I see. I didn't know. Maria would probably love this place too." Ronan also noticed the egg absorbing energy intensely. He felt sorry for her as Maria had her own business to attend to. If she weren't busy with trading, she could have come with us. What a shame. Asel nodded in agreement with Ronan. "That's right." Suddenly he voiced his doubts. "Ronan, isn't this a bit strange?" Ronan, kneeling on one knee, turned his head and asked, "What's wrong?" Asel continued. "Professor Baren said that because there's so much mana here, many mythical creatures would come to nest. Even ordinary beasts would do the same. This place is very good. Asel's words seemed to awaken Ronan, making him realize something. But why don't we hear any animal sounds? A gust of wind blew, making the leaves flutter and intensifying the tension in the air. Ronan sighed softly. He had also sensed the strangeness of this place. I was too careless. He slowly stood up. Ronan cursed under his breath, then scratched his head in frustration. Damn it, everything is spiraling out of control again. Why do I run into trouble wherever I go? Asel, noticing his unease, cautiously asked, What's wrong? Ronan, on high alert, looked into the dangerous forest and warned Asel. Prepare yourself, Asel. In the distance within the forest were the corpses of animals. Ronan, trusting his senses, had already smelled the blood from them. There's a group of mysterious people hunting and killing. He informed Asel. There's a strong smell of blood. Asel froze in fear, startled by Ronan's piercing gaze. With a trembling voice, he asked, The smell of blood. What? What do you mean by that? His face turned serious as he asked, What do you think I mean? It means someone else has been here before us. Ronan smirked slightly. Of course, guests are here. The atmosphere in the forest grew increasingly eerie. Danger was approaching the two of them. The glint of purple arrows signaled uninvited guests. The group consisted of 5 people. The leader was a purple-haired man in the middle, flanked by 2 wolf-masked individuals on each side. All of them had their bows aimed at Ronan and his group. With a whoosh, 5 arrows shot out from the forest toward Ronan, who remained calm as he watched them. As the top scorer of Philion Academy, Ronan easily blocked those arrows. His eyes sharpened as he drew the sword at his side. With a single light swing, Ronan sliced them in half. The fragments of the purple arrows scattered across the ground. His cold, sharp gaze focused on the specially designed purple arrow. I'm sure I've seen this before. In Ronan's past life memories, he seemed very familiar with this unique arrow. In my past life at the disciplinary squad's camp deep in the forest at night, our team had a lively discussion. Do you know how terrifying this thing is? One of the disciplinary squad members held up the special purple arrow and introduced it. Brahm coughed loudly to grab the team's attention and explained its use. It's for killing Orsies. This special arrow can blow their heads off. What do you think, Captain? You want one too, right? He asked Ronan. Ronan, knowing Brahm's tendencies, chuckled lightly. Here he goes again. Ronan scolded him. You got caught using it for hunting and now you're bragging. Can you shut up? Brahm, being scolded, was indignant and shouted back, I'm telling you, these two are good stuff. He frowned and elaborated on the arrow's lethality. The one who used this arrow hundreds of times and successfully poached is a high-ranking member of our organization, the Hounds of the Caribolo branch. Returning to the present, Ronan fully remembered the origin of this special arrow based on his past life's information. So it's Caribolo, huh? And their ranks are similar to the hierarchy of hunting dogs, right? Ronan couldn't help but compliment, well done. Before heading into the forest to where the arrows were shot, Ronan reminded Asel. Asel, hide somewhere. Just try not to turn into a porcupine by the end. Ignoring Asel's confusion as everything happened too quickly, Ronan said, I'll handle this. With that, Asel watched in amazement as Ronan dashed off at an incredible speed. The purple-haired leader hiding behind a tree marveled at Ronan's strength. What the hell is this guy? He just blocked all those arrows with a single swing. Who the hell is he? Meanwhile, Ronan's eyes burned with intensity as he charged toward them like a gust of wind. The leader sensed something was wrong and cursed, then shouted to his subordinates. Damn it, everyone, scatter! We'll surround and attack him. Ronan, standing at a distance, listened to their conversation and thought, just as I expected. He's very decisive. Is it because they're different from the brats I dealt with in that forest? This isn't good. Following the purple-haired man's orders, the group scattered in all directions. Ronan ran over and shouted, Stop! Don't you recognize your own comrades? The man in the tree was puzzled by his words. Comrades. What the hell is this guy talking about? Ronan chuckled lightly and continued. What's wrong? Seems like you haven't heard the news. He confidently rested his sword on his shoulder and arrogantly lied. I'm the youngest hound from the Ahayut branch. The group, hearing this, jumped down from the trees and stood in front of Ronan to question him. Are you really a hound? He remained calm and replied, Not only that, but I also made him flustered. That's right. How can you not believe me? The purple-haired man, being challenged, angrily shouted, How can I believe a brat like you is a hound? If you said you were from a lower branch, I might believe you. Ronan, hearing the man's skepticism, didn't lose his composure and continued. If you don't believe me, why don't you ask the wolves from your own branch? I'm serious. Projecting your own thoughts onto others is a bad habit, you wild dog. Ronan's provocative smile made others uncomfortable, as if they were being taunted and looked down upon. How pitiful! His sarcastic remark successfully angered the purple-haired leader, making his face twist as he gritted his teeth, suppressing his rage. He wasn't one to easily tolerate such provocation. He stepped forward, grabbed Ronan by the collar, and cursed. You damn brat, how dare you insult me? He threatened. Do you want me to chop off your limbs? Ronan, unafraid, found it even more amusing and continued to provoke him. Oh my, your habit of cursing people is just as bad. People like you usually don't end well. A team member stepped forward, patted his shoulder, and advised, calm down. Just because he's a kid doesn't mean you should doubt him. He continued. He knows about and mentioned the Caliboro hierarchy. The ranks in order are wolves at the top, followed by hounds, and finally wild dogs at the bottom. Only our people know this well. Ronan continued to smirk, taunting the man, even with a knife pressed to his neck, teetering on the brink of death. He continued to reassure. Just confirm with the team leader. If he's not lying, we might have a conflict with the Damas branch later. I told you to stay silent, guard, and always be ready. The team leader mentioned earlier emerged from the bushes in the forest and scolded his subordinates. Seeing the team not following orders, and a stranger Ronan being held by the collar by the purple-haired man, he asked, What the hell is going on here? The group shouted in unison. Greetings, team leader. The team leader among them was a burly, bald man with countless scars on his body, even on his head. Veum, the purple-haired man, as if finding a savior, released Ronan. Perfect timing, team leader. He recounted to Veum what Ronan had told them. This brat said. The surrounding subordinates continued to chatter. Ronan stood listening and thought, if the wolves are here, that means all of them are here, right? Thinking this, he let out a laugh. After hearing the whole story, Veum asked Ronan, Kid, are you from the Ahayut branch of the Damas clan? He calmly continued, cheerfully showcasing his acting skills. Yes, sir. Veum went on. Honestly, why are you here? This mountain range has already been claimed. Ronan, without changing his expression, kept his cheerful smile and replied, Oh, really? I'm not so sure about that because I'm not Ahayut. Veum was so angered by his words that the veins on his head bulged. What? Before Veum could regain his composure, Ronan charged forward and lightly swung his sword, easily slicing the masked men in half. Fresh blood splattered everywhere, and even the victims Ronan killed didn't understand what was happening. He killed everyone except for the team leader Veum and the purple-haired man. I just randomly used a name I knew. When the two realized the truth, their expressions changed. The purple-haired man turned pale with fear while Veum was tense and angry, gripping the sword at his side. Ronan cheerfully charged forward, swinging his sword at Veum. After all, it's the best name to disguise myself as a damn poacher. Before Veum could resist or defend himself, Ronan's sword decapitated him. The purple-haired man was terrified by the scene, his face dumbfounded. Holding a small knife, he watched Veum's head fall to the ground. Why did I call him captain? After dealing with the team leader, Ronan casually said, Bro, didn't I tell you your ending would be terrible? Suddenly, the finger of the hand holding the small knife began to rot and fall off. The man screamed in pain and terror. The purple-haired man knelt on the ground, clutching his hand. My hand, my finger. Ronan, annoyed by his whining, ordered, Shut up. If you don't want to get punched here, calm down and take this. He tossed a scroll in front of the purple-haired man who was crying in pain and holding his rotting, trembling hand. Then Ronan pointed and commanded, From now on, you'll write down the locations of all the clans you know. The man knelt on the ground, stammering, Why is there a problem? Don't you want to? Ronan smiled brightly, tapping his sword to threaten. Then there's no reason to keep you alive. Ronan became terrifyingly menacing, making the purple-haired man sweat profusely. The man obediently complied, trembling. I'll do whatever you want, but I don't have anything to draw a map with, Ronan calmly replied. What are you whining about? I'll make you a pen right there on your right hand." The man's face was drenched in tears and snot as he looked at what Ronan called a pen. His own bleeding hand. After some time, the map was completed. Ronan looked at the blood-drawn map in his hand and couldn't stop praising. "Well done. You draw beautifully. Truly talented." The purple-haired man's face turned pale and haggard, no longer daring to be rude. "Thank you. As promised, you'll spare me, right?" Ronan put the map in his pocket and replied, "About that." A sword swung down from above, and before the man could understand what was happening, his body was split in two by Ronan. Ronan's cold, bloodthirsty face, splattered with blood, continued. Of course not. After eliminating the Karibolo group, it was sunset. The sound of birds flying in the sky broke the forest's silence. Asel clung to a tree trunk, panting, his face pale. Ronan stood behind him, annoyed. "Don't overdo it. I told you to prepare yourself." Asel sadly apologized. "I'm sorry," he said. Then asked, "But isn't this a bit too much, really, this whole thing?" As he spoke, Asel looked toward the pile of animal corpses left by Karibolo. What? Before them were countless corpses hunted by the Karibolo group scattered everywhere. Ronan replied, "I told you before. Letting them live is a crime." But Asel still felt uneasy and stammered, "But you reassured me." Ronan turned his back and left. "Don't worry, they're all wanted criminals who needed to be killed." Ronan walked away, still deep in thought. How to hide this? He suddenly thought of the lion-like zoology professor. If Professor Barron saw this, he'd be very sad. Ronan told Asel, "Let's head back now." Suddenly, there was movement in the bag containing the professor's egg. He was drawn to its shaking and looked down. "What's this?" Ronan didn't understand why the egg was acting up, so he opened the bag and pulled it out. Why is this suddenly... Asel, as if noticing something terrifying, pointed with a trembling finger. "Ronano, it seems like you've encountered something extremely scary." Asela's face turned pale, his whole body trembling. Ronan, who had been focused on the egg, asked, "What's going on?" He was also shocked by the scene Asel pointed out. The blood of the killed animals inexplicably rose into the air. Even Ronan, who had been reborn, had never seen such a thing before. At first, small drops of blood rose, gradually forming larger pools, until finally a massive sea of blood appeared. Asel was terrified, his face drained of color, and he screamed. Ronan, though equally surprised, tried to stay calm, his hand already on his sword, ready for any attack. He cursed, "What the hell is this?" In a moment of carelessness, he accidentally dropped the egg. Ronan was amazed to see the egg suddenly emit a powerful purple light. Moreover, it flew into the sea of blood, and he gradually realized the egg was absorbing this blood. Asel, terrified by this first-time experience, asked Ronan, "What's going on?" Ronan, still calm, replied, "How should I know you, idiot? But I do know one thing." He smiled with excitement. "Whatever's inside this egg, it's definitely not ordinary." The purple egg vigorously absorbed the entire sea of blood, leaving nothing behind. Asel, seeing it stop, stammered, "Is it over?" Ronan shared the same view. "Seems like it, but there's no change. The egg looks the same from its color to its appearance." Suddenly it began to crack. The egg was breaking open as if it was about to hatch. Asel exclaimed in surprise. "The egg is cracking." Ronan also predicted, "It seems like it's about to hatch." He cheered with excitement. "Great! Let's see what it is. Let's see if it's worth it." Suddenly something shot out of the egg straight into Ronan's face, leaving him no time to react. Asel beside him was also terrified, and screamed Ronano. Ronan clenched his teeth in pain, rubbing the wound on his nose. "What's this?" Ronan looked at the creature that hatched from the egg and exclaimed, "A phantom bird! It's purple, just like the egg." 4 wings on its back floated in the air, resembling a dragon. He stared at the phantom bird, dumbfounded. But no matter how he looked at it, it didn't resemble a bird at all. Asel, feeling the same, evaluated it. "It looks more like a dragon, doesn't it?" He pointed at it and asked Asel, "You think so too, right?" Asel confirmed, "Yes. It looks similar to what I've seen in books." Ronan, still bewildered, thought, where did it absorb mana from to hatch into this? A dragon. But he reached out to pet it. The phantom bird was very friendly and obedient, wrapping itself around Ronan's hand, making him praise, "You're quite cute." It seemed to understand human language and let out a cry. But its cuteness didn't excuse its aggressive behavior that injured Ronan's nose. He scolded, "Your way of greeting is a bit excessive. You stabbed right into my nose." The phantom bird understood Ronan and began to use its magic on him. Instantly, the wound on his nose healed and disappeared without a trace. Ronan was amazed. "My wound is gone." A cell full of admiration replied, "It seems this little one knows healing magic too." He seemed to really like the phantom bird, praising it endlessly. "So cute. And it seems to really like you, Ronano." The phantom bird flew over and nuzzled his cheek, making Ronan unable to stay angry. "Heavens, this little one has more abilities than I thought." Now a cell happily suggested, "Let's give it a name, Ronan. We can't just keep calling it Phantom Bird." Ronan thought it over and agreed. "That's right. What name would be good?" Suddenly the phantom bird sensed something unusual around it and began to stare intently in a certain direction. Then the phantom bird let out a cry and quickly flew off. Acel, still discussing names, didn't understand what was happening. "What's going on? Why did it suddenly fly away?" Ronan crossed his arms and calmly replied, "It seems it sensed the presence of that guy. Didn't you notice?" In the distance, hurried footsteps echoed through the forest. A hooded stranger ran away quickly, as if something was threatening him. The man was Braum, the messenger from the Demia branch. He ran while cursing in his head, "What the hell is this?" Braum recalled earlier when he returned and saw the corpses of his comrades scattered everywhere. "I just went to deliver a message. How did everyone die?" He followed the trail to where Ronan and Acel were standing and happened to witness the sea of blood that had formed. His heart was filled with terror. What the hell was that sea of blood just now? It seemed Braum realized he was in danger and immediately turned to flee. "What's going on?" Something was charging toward him, making Braum's eyes bulge in fear as he ran away. While running, his thoughts were chaotic, causing him to lose focus. He didn't notice the tree root and tripped, falling flat on the ground with a painful cry. He turned around and saw the phantom bird flying toward him, using its magic on him. Braum was in so much pain that tears streamed down his face as he screamed for help. "My blood, save me!" The sound of footsteps became clearer. A voice commanded, making the phantom bird stop its actions. It was Ronan's voice. He and Acel walked over and said, "That's enough, Sita. If this continues, he'll die." Acela curiously asked, "Is Sita its name?" Ronan didn't deny it, and calmly played with Sita, perched on his hand. "Yes, I already had this name in mind." Ronan ignored Braum's presence and focused on playing with Sita. "How about it? Do you like the name?" Braum sat down on the ground, staring at Ronan in shock. "This kid, isn't he the guy from before? Is he the owner of that monster? Who is he really?" A voice interrupted his thoughts. "Hey," Ronan asked about Braum's condition. "Are you okay, Braum?" Braum flinched and replied, "What? Oh yes." He obediently knelt on the ground. "Thanks to you, I'm still alive. But how do you know my name?" In an instant, Ronan's sword was pressed against Braum's neck, threatening him. "You don't need to know that." Braum was too scared to move even the slightest bit. Braum was a member of the security squad in Ronan's previous life, and he still remembered him clearly. Then continued, "I didn't expect to meet you here. Anyway, it's a pleasure to see you. How's the poaching going?" "Sir Carabolo, the Bloodhound." Ronan's words had just ended when Braum suddenly exclaimed, "What? The Bloodhound?" He stammered in a low voice, "I'm just a messenger, that's all." Ronan also remembered that things were different now and couldn't help but tease. "Still stuck at the bottom of the ranks, huh? But that's fine because I have a job for you. It's about the information of the person involved in this matter. Not that I'm asking for your help, though." Ronan flashed a sly smile. By the time they returned to the capital, it was already dark, and the moonlight illuminated the land. Then Ronan juggled the coins in his hand and said, Well, not bad." He clenched the coins and exclaimed, "Better than I thought." A cell beside him also cheered happily. "I agree. This is really unexpected. Ronan raised the water bottle, laughing so hard his ears almost split, and said, "You said the spring water turned into gold when you took it. We were so confused back then." But as soon as Doron held the water bottle, he bluntly said, "But Mariah's father, how could he offer such a high price?" Asel turned to him joyfully and said, "Thanks to him, we don't have to worry about money anymore, right?" Ronan replied, "Yeah, we owe Professor Barron too much." When both of them arrived at Barron's door, they saw a sign hanging outside that said, "On a business trip." They had come here to thank him and show him Sita, but he was already gone. What a pity. Ronan recalled the moment he was threatening Brahm and thought, but along with the task he assigned to Brahm, the map he received from that hound wasn't just a simple gesture. He remembered how Brahm was so scared that he burst into tears, begging, "Let me go, I'll do anything." Ronan flashed a sly smile and thought I've scared him so much that he wouldn't dare to plot anything else. Asel turned to him and asked, "What do you want to do with that money?" Ronan Rank 2 students are exempt from tuition and even receive support fees, so you don't have to pay much, do you? He continued. "Do you want to do something?" Ronan stroked his chin and pondered. "What do I want to do?" After standing for a while, he suddenly realized, "Oh, I just remembered the welcoming ceremony is coming up soon." A few days later at the Valon City stables, a man opened the carriage door and respectfully said, "We've arrived, miss." The girl inside also replied, "Yes, thank you." It turned out to be Iriel. As she stepped out and looked around, she exclaimed, "Wow, so this is the capital city." Valon. She stood on the street, the wind fluttering her hair and dress, and couldn't help but exclaim, "It's so beautiful." Ronan, who had been waiting, asked, "You must be tired, right?" Seeing her younger brother Iriel happily called out Ronan, he immediately asked, "Nothing happened while you were traveling, right?" Iriel quickly replied, "I should be the one asking that." She recalled how suddenly a luxurious golden carriage appeared out of nowhere, and a servant stepped out respectfully, saying, "Your brother sent the carriage." Iriel was so shocked, she gaped and scolded Ronan. "Do you know how surprised I was when this luxurious carriage appeared in front of the house? How could this be? Where did you get the money?" Iriel stepped forward, pinched Ronan's face, and asked with concern, "Why are you so thin? Have you been eating properly?" He replied, "Don't worry, I eat a lot." Adishan also reassured him. "That's good then." Then she noticed Sita and exclaimed, "Oh, who's this? So cute." When it heard her praise, it flapped its wings happily. Ronan explained, "Oh, this is Sita. Due to some circumstances, it started living with me." After saying that, he quickly grabbed Adishan's hand and urged, "But sis, we need to hurry. We don't have time." She was confused. "Hurry? Where are we going?" Before she could finish asking, Ronan interrupted and explained, "Once I enter the academy, I'll be very busy for a while. So I want to do these things first. I must do this." Then the two of them went to a clothing store somewhere on the street. Inside, Adishan stammered shyly, "Ronan." She then said, "I know you've been earning a lot of money lately. I also know you have a scholarship, so you can afford to be more relaxed." Ronan didn't care what she said, just propped his chin and admired. "You look good in anything." But Adishan had already picked out a beautiful long yellow dress. She looked just like a young lady, but she worried. "But isn't this a bit too expensive?" Meanwhile, Ronan was busy asking the store clerk, "Can you deliver all of these to me?" The clerk happily replied, "Of course." Then Adishan turned to look at the pile of clothing boxes he had bought and questioned. "This much?" Ronan casually replied, "It's not that much. You've endured so much hardship." Then he said seriously, "It's time for me to take care of you." Hearing her little brother say that, Adishan instinctively covered her mouth in shock. Her eyes welled up as she thought, "When did my little brother grow up so much?" Then Adishan rushed out, raising her hands to the sky, and proudly shouted, "Everyone look! My brother is so good!" Ronan couldn't even stop her in time. The store clerk saw this and smiled. "They get along so well, huh?" The old man beside him also replied, "Indeed." Ronan then shouted, "All right, let's go!" Adishan happily replied, "Okay." She ran after him and excitedly asked, "Where are we going now?" Ronan calmly replied. Let's go check out the workshop. A few days ago, my sword got damaged by some lunatic. As soon as he opened the door, Schlieffen was already waiting outside. Finally done, huh? He glanced over and said, Ronan, where did this guy come from? Ronan and Sita were so startled they screamed loudly. He shrank back and questioned. Huh. Why did you pop out from there? Are you following me? Schlieffen calmly replied, I came to get the new sword. The one I was using got damaged because of you. He coldly said, Then I happened to see you, so I waited. Don't accuse me like that. Ronan wasn't having it and snapped back. That's still following you, bastard. Damaged, huh? He immediately drew his shiny sword and angrily said, Look at my sword. How dare you say that? Who's really at fault here? Ronan, seething with anger, leaned close to Schlieffen and threatened. Do you want me to show you what damaged really means? He also drew his sword and retorted, Not bad, no mercy. Iriel immediately stepped in between the two hotheads and tried to stop them. No, Ronan, I've told you not to swear. Then Ronan flusteredly explained, Wait, sis, you've got it wrong. It's because of this bastard. Iriel cut him off sternly. Are you arguing with me? Seeing this, Schlieffen thought. Sis. She put her hand on her face and sincerely said, I'm really sorry. Even though my brother talks like that, he's actually very well behaved. Schlieffen, the descendant of the prestigious Granchia family and a rising talent of the empire, looked at the situation like this. Iriel touched her blushing, beautiful face and said, You must be really shocked, right? Schlieffen stared at her embarrassed and blushing. He saw a goddess. Iriel clasped her hands and bowed earnestly. It's my fault for not teaching him properly. Please forgive my brother. He stammered in response. No, Schlieffen, who was usually valiant on the battlefield, was now shy and timid in front of a beautiful lady. He placed his hand on his shoulder, showing remorse, and calmly said, No, it's all my fault for not being thorough. It's not the young lady's fault. Then Schlieffen, acting noble, continued. Everything is my fault, so please set your heart at ease, milady. Iriel clasped her hands together joyfully. Oh my! Really? You're so kind! Then she tightly held his hands and said gratefully, Ronan, I'm so glad he has a friend like you. Ronan watched from afar as the two kept talking. Iriel happily said, Please take care of my brother. Okay? Schlieffen shyly replied. Of course. Ronan was a bit surprised by this. Schlieffen, flustered, clutched his chest and tried to stay calm. Then I'll compensate for his sword. I don't have any gold with me right now. Then he pulled out a large golden circle the size of his palm and said, So please accept this. It's proof of my family's status. Seeing Iriel take it with a bright smile, Schlieffen continued. It can be used anywhere in the empire. Ronano, seeing this, was shocked and shouted. Then he yelled, Do you know what it means to give that to her? Schlieffen, handsome and calm, said, If you want to buy a sword, go to the forge on the west side of this street. It's a place with 500 years of history, so it's hard for ordinary people to enter. But with that, you can get in. Then he shyly left, not forgetting to add, I hope you get a good sword. Ronan thought to himself, Does that lunatic know what he's doing? Seeing his sister admiring the circular object, he thought, Holding that you could buy an entire village. He looked at Schlieffen's trembling figure pretending to hurry away and pondered, Is that really the sword? Saint Schlieffen? I know. Time flew by, and the next day arrived with a clear blue sky. At the main schoolyard, a ceremony was taking place, the welcome ceremony for Philion Academy. I am Kravar. He stood on the podium in front of everyone and said, It's a pleasure to meet the students of the 787th class. Then he confidently introduced himself. I am the headmaster of Philion Academy, Kravar, Kratier. Below, Ronan, Maria, and Asela were also present. Kravar continued. As you all know, you've passed the exam with excellent skills and proven your potential. When your limitless talent and Philion's high-level education come together, he cheerfully added, I believe you will be recorded in the Empire's history. Kravar Kratier concluded. Congratulations to all the students of the 787th class. Ronan, standing below, yawned repeatedly, bored and sleepy, looking at Ariel, who was wiping her tears with a handkerchief. He thought, well, it's not too bad. As long as she's happy, it's fine. Then Kravar spoke again. Now then, he snapped his fingers with a click. Suddenly, a rainbow-like light appeared around everyone. It was mesmerizing, leaving everyone surprised. Asel, exclaimed Ronan. On the other side, others were also panicking, pointing at the light and saying, "What's that over there?" Looking up at the central podium, an invisible glass wall appeared, but was shattered at one point. Someone shouted, "The sky is breaking." From the crack, a strange purple light flashed. Suddenly, everyone from the school was transported to an arena. A cheerful voice rang out from above. "It's a pleasure to meet you, first years." Ronan looked up in awe. "What's this?" He transported an entire field with just a snap of his fingers. Kravar now calmly spoke. "All right, now it's the highlight of Phi Leon's welcome ceremony. Let's begin the meeting between the classes." Finally, the day of the new school year's welcome event arrived. This event was a meeting organized between the first years and the second-year students. The location was where they first met. The process was quite tense, and it was a special event at Philion. The battle was described as when the two highest-scoring students from the entrance exam represented the first years. They were paired with the 4 best second-year students. Those second years already had their own fighting styles. They would fight one-on-one in turn. Headmaster Kravar stood on the podium and enthusiastically shared the meaning of this event, which was closely related to the teachers at Philion. On the stage, he continued, "It strengthens the relationship between the upperclassmen and the first years, allowing them to learn about each other's strengths and weaknesses. I believe this will supplement your knowledge. And this battle will mark the beginning of your real learning." These battles are educational, and through them the representatives of each year will showcase their first steps in the academy. He added, "Of course, the first years will have the right to choose their opponents, and the second years cannot refuse once chosen. This is just a battle for learning, so don't feel pressured. First-year representatives, just relax." Seeing the headmaster ramble on, Ronan was annoyed. He's beating around the bush. His words are only making the first years more confused. The second-year group included a blonde young man specializing in martial arts. The top second-year student, Nazdo, a tanned young man with a scar on his face specializing in martial arts. The second-ranked second-year student, Brahm. He looked at Ronan and Schlieffen and said, "Are those two the most famous this year?" There were also 2 other second years, a purple-haired young man specializing in martial arts, the 4th-ranked second-year student Karan, and a short-haired, orange-haired girl with a strong personality. Specializing in martial arts, the 3rd-ranked second-year student Krun. Then came the introduction of the first-year group, the Empire's top talent Schlieffen, and the shooting star who defeated him in the practical exam. Ronan. Krun impatiently urged, "I can't wait to fight them quickly." Hearing this, Ronan leaned back, trembling. This senior looks tough. Looking at his sister Adishan, who was praying for him, Ronan was determined. "Since things aren't going as planned, I can show her that I won't be easily defeated." Then he closed his eyes and focused, calculating. "If I can show her the perfect combination between me and him, that would be great." A voice interrupted, cutting off Ronan's thoughts. "All right, first years, feel free to choose your opponents." He raised his hand to address the headmaster. "Excuse me, may I make a suggestion?" The headmaster said. "A suggestion?" Then he confidently voiced his thoughts. "Since we can freely choose our opponents,